Story 1. At my wife's funeral, I stood alone at the front while not a single member of her family was present to mourn the woman they'd disowned 12 years ago for marrying a black man. At midnight, her parents pounded on my door, pushing past me into the house without a word of condolence. Her father demanded, "We're here for Jennifer's cars and the business papers, they belong to us now." When I explained that everything was legally mine and the children's, her mother sneered, "She was our daughter long before she made her mistake with you." I grabbed them both, kicked them out, and said, "You buried your daughter 12 years ago when you chose hatred over love. She died to you then, so you get nothing from her now. Don't you dare come back here pretending to grieve for a woman whose heart you broke every single day," and slammed the door on them. That was 2 days ago. This morning, I found out they're trying to sue me. But they have no idea who they're messing with. See, what Jennifer's parents don't know, what nobody knows except me and maybe 3 other people on this planet, is that I'm not just some random guy their daughter fell for. I'm Marcus Chen Williams, and before I met Jennifer, before I became a suburban dad who coaches Little League and makes pancakes on Sunday mornings, I was something else entirely. I was the kind of person who made problems disappear. But let me back up, because you need to understand how we got here. You need to understand what kind of woman Jennifer was, and what her family put her through, before you can appreciate just how badly they've messed up by coming after me now. 12 years ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Portland, trying to look like I belonged there. I'd been in the city for 3 weeks, working on something I can't tell you about. Let's just say it involved making sure a certain tech executive never felt safe walking to his car again. I was good at my job. Too good, maybe. The kind of good that makes you paranoid about every shadow, every unexpected phone call, every knock at the door. That's when she walked in. Jennifer Morrison, though she'd be Jennifer Chen Williams soon enough, had this way of moving through the world like she owned it. Not arrogant, just confident. She ordered her coffee like she was conducting an orchestra, precise, clear, expecting excellence. When she turned around, scanning for a table, her eyes met mine and something happened that I still can't explain. She smiled. Not the polite, distant smile you give strangers. A real smile, like she was genuinely happy to see me, even though we'd never met. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, gesturing to the chair across from me. I should have said yes. I should have grabbed my laptop and walked away, because getting involved with anyone was against every rule I'd learned in 15 years of living in the shadows. But something about her made me stupid. "It's yours if you want it," I said. 3 hours later, I knew she was a patent attorney who specialized in biotech, that she'd grown up in a small town called Millfield about 2 hours south, and that she had this laugh that made me want to tell jokes I didn't even know I remembered. She knew I was in consulting, which wasn't exactly a lie, and that I'd traveled more than most people but never really felt at home anywhere. What she didn't know was that the laptop I'd closed when she sat down contained detailed surveillance photos of her future brother-in-law, or that the consulting I did involved the kind of people who paid in untraceable cryptocurrency. What I didn't know was that falling in love with her would save my life in ways I never saw coming. We dated for 8 months before she mentioned her family. 8 months of carefully orchestrated meetings in public places, of me checking exits and keeping conversations light, of her slowly working through whatever walls she'd built around the subject of home. "My parents want to meet you," she said one evening as we walked along the waterfront. The sun was setting, painting the river orange and gold, and she'd been quiet all day. "Okay," I said, though every instinct I'd developed screamed against it. She stopped walking. "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you first." The way she said it made my chest tight. In my line of work, conversations that started like that usually ended with someone pulling a gun. "My family is." She struggled with the words. "They have very specific ideas about who I should be with. About what kind of life I should live." I waited. Over the months, I'd learned that Jennifer chose her words carefully, and rushing her never led anywhere good. "They're racist," she said finally, the word dropping between us like a stone. Not the kind that burns crosses or anything, but the kind that would disown their daughter for dating a black man. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not fear, I'd stopped being afraid of bigots a long time ago. But disappointment. Bone deep, crushing disappointment that the woman I was falling in love with came from that kind of family. "Are you asking me to pretend to be something I'm not?" I asked. "No." Her voice was fierce, immediate. "Gosh, no. I'm asking if you're willing to deal with the consequences of being with someone whose family might never accept you. Because I've already made my choice, Marcus. I made it the day I met you." 3 weeks later, we drove to Millfield. The Morrison family home looked like something out of a magazine. White colonial with black shutters, perfect lawn, flowers arranged with military precision. The kind of place where everything had a purpose and nothing was ever out of place. Jennifer's father, Robert Morrison, answered the door wearing a polo shirt and khakis that probably cost more than most people's rent. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of bearing that screamed old money and older prejudices. Behind him, I could see Jennifer's mother, Patricia, blonde, elegant, studying me like I was a specimen under glass. "You must be Marcus," Robert said, extending his hand with the enthusiasm of someone handling a dead fish. "Mr. Morrison." I shook his hand, matching his grip exactly. Not too firm, that would be threatening. Not too soft, that would be weak. Just enough to remind him that I wasn't intimidated. The next 4 hours were a masterclass in passive aggression. Every question was a trap, every comment a test. They asked about my background with barely concealed suspicion. They wondered aloud about my people and whether Jennifer had thought this through. They made jokes about urban culture and different values while smiling like they were being generous by including me in the conversation. Jennifer sat beside me, tension radiating from her like heat from a radiator. I watched her parents slowly, methodically try to tear down the woman I loved, using smiles and politeness as weapons. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I started talking. Not about my fake consulting job or my careful cover story. I talked about growing up in Oakland, about my mother working 2 jobs to keep us fed, about earning my way into Berkeley and then Harvard Business School. I talked about traveling the world, about speaking 4 languages, about the books I'd read and the places I'd seen. I let them see exactly who they were dismissing. By the end of the evening, Robert Morrison's jaw was tight with barely controlled anger, and Patricia had stopped making eye contact entirely. They'd expected some stereotype they could easily dismiss. Instead, they got someone who was clearly more educated, more worldly, and more articulate than they'd bargained for. "Well," Patricia said as we prepared to leave, "this has been illuminating." Jennifer kissed her parents goodbye with mechanical politeness. In the car, she was quiet for the first hour of the drive home. "That went well," I said finally, trying to lighten the mood. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They hate you." "I know. They're going to make this as difficult as possible." "I know that too." She turned to look at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Are you sure you want to deal with this? With them? With what loving me is going to cost you?" I pulled over at the next rest stop and turned off the engine. The parking lot was empty except for a few long-haul truckers catching sleep in their cabs. In the distance, I could hear the whisper of traffic on the interstate. "Jennifer," I said, "I've dealt with worse people than your parents. Trust me on that." She laughed again, and this time it was real. "Promise me something." "What?" "When they try to destroy this, and they will try, promise me you won't just disappear. Promise me you'll fight for us." I kissed her then, tasting salt from tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. "I promise," I said. I meant it. But I had no idea what that promise would eventually cost me. We got married 8 months later in a small ceremony in Portland. Jennifer wore her grandmother's dress and carried white roses. I wore a navy suit and tried not to scan the crowd for threats, old habits. Her parents didn't come. Neither did her brother or her sister or any of the aunts and uncles who'd helped raise her. Jennifer pretended it didn't matter, but I saw her check the door every few minutes during the ceremony, hope flickering in her eyes like a candle in the wind. My side of the church was fuller. My mother flew in from Oakland, proud and elegant in a purple dress she'd probably saved for months to buy. A few friends from my legitimate life, carefully chosen for their ability to keep their mouths shut about my other activities. My former handler, Rodriguez, who'd become something like a father figure over the years, sat in the back wearing a gray suit and sunglasses, looking like exactly what he was. After the ceremony, during the reception, Rodriguez pulled me aside. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Sure about what?" "Going straight. Because that's what this is, isn't it? You're not planning to tell her about the life." He was right. Somewhere between falling in love with Jennifer and standing at that altar, I'd made a decision I hadn't fully admitted to myself. I was done. Done with the shadows, done with the violence, done with checking over my shoulder every time I heard footsteps. "She doesn't need to know," I said. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Her family's going to be a problem." "I can handle her family." "Can you handle them without becoming the person you used to be?" That was the question, wasn't it? Because the Marcus that Jennifer had fallen in love with was kind, patient, gentle. He coached kids and volunteered at food banks and had never hurt anyone in his life. The other Marcus, the one Rodriguez knew, solved problems with methods that would horrify the woman now laughing with my mother across the room. "I won't need to," I said. Rodriguez just smiled. "Sure, kid. But if you ever do need to, you know my number." For 10 years, I managed to keep both worlds separate. Jennifer built her practice into one of the most successful boutique patent firms on the West Coast. I started a legitimate consulting business, actually legitimate this time, helping small companies navigate international markets. We bought a house in the suburbs with a good school district. We had 2 kids, Sarah, who got Jennifer's brains and my stubborn streak, and Michael, who had his mother's laugh and his father's ability to charm anyone into doing whatever he wanted. Life was good. Better than good. It was everything I'd never thought I could have. Jennifer's family never came around. They sent birthday cards to the kids with no return address. They didn't call on holidays. When Jennifer's grandmother died, the one whose dress she'd worn at our wedding, they didn't tell her about the funeral until after it was over. Each rejection broke Jennifer's heart a little more. She tried to hide it, tried to pretend it didn't matter, but I saw her sometimes, looking at family photos from before we met, touching the faces of people who'd decided she no longer existed. I could reach out, I suggested once. Talk to your father. Man to man. No, she said quickly. That would only make things worse. She was probably right. The man I'd become wouldn't have made things worse. But the man I used to be? He might have made the Morrison family's problems permanently disappear. Everything changed 3 months ago. Jennifer had been fighting the headaches for weeks, dismissing them as stress from a particularly complex case. Then came the morning I found her collapsed in the kitchen, Sarah screaming and Michael standing frozen in the doorway. Glioblastoma. Stage 4. 6 months to live, maybe 8 if we were lucky. We weren't lucky. Jennifer deteriorated fast. Faster than the doctors expected, faster than any of us were prepared for. The woman who'd built a legal empire with her bare hands, who'd faced down hostile patent boards and intimidating corporate lawyers without breaking a sweat, became someone who needed help remembering our children's names. In her lucid moments, she made me promise things. That I'd make sure the kids remembered her. That I'd keep them safe. That I wouldn't let her family poison them against her memory. They'll try, she whispered one night, her voice barely audible over the hum of medical equipment. When I'm gone, they'll try to rewrite history. Make it seem like I abandoned them instead of the other way around. I won't let that happen. Promise me, Marcus. Whatever they do, whatever they say, don't let them take the kids from what we built. I promised. Again, I meant it. But I still didn't understand what I was promising to fight against. The funeral was exactly what Jennifer would have wanted. Simple, elegant, focused on celebration rather than sorrow. The church was packed with colleagues, clients, friends from the neighborhood. People stood up to share stories about Jennifer's kindness, her brilliance, her unwavering sense of justice. I sat in the front row with Sarah and Michael, trying to be strong for them while my own world crumbled around me. Sarah cried quietly into my shoulder. Michael, only 8 years old, kept asking when Mommy was coming home. Every few minutes, I found myself looking toward the back of the church, hoping against hope that Jennifer's family had changed their minds. That grief might have finally broken through 12 years of stubborn pride. They never showed. After the service, after the burial, after the reception where I shook hands with hundreds of people who loved my wife, I took the kids home. Sarah went straight to her room. Michael fell asleep on the couch watching cartoons, exhausted by emotions he was too young to understand. I poured myself a drink, something expensive Jennifer had been saving for a special occasion that would never come, and sat in my home office, staring at a wall covered with photos of our life together. That's when the doorbell rang. It was midnight. The kids were asleep upstairs. I'd spent the last hour alternating between tears and rage, between grief and the kind of cold, calculating anger I hadn't felt in over a decade. The doorbell rang again, followed by heavy pounding on the front door. I looked through the peephole and felt something sharp twist in my chest. Robert Morrison stood on my porch, Patricia beside him, both of them looking like they owned the place. Behind them, a younger man I recognized as Jennifer's brother, David, shifted nervously from foot to foot. I opened the door. "We're here for Jennifer's cars and the business papers," Robert said without preamble. No condolences, no acknowledgement of what had happened, no recognition that 2 children upstairs had just lost their mother. They belong to us now. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The audacity of it, the sheer brass-plated cruelty, left me speechless. These people hadn't spoken to Jennifer in 12 years. They'd refused to come to her funeral, refused to acknowledge her existence, refused to let her children know their grandparents. And now they wanted her assets? "Excuse me?" I managed. "The business papers," Patricia repeated, pushing past me into the foyer like she'd been invited. "Jennifer's law practice. Her client list. The cars. We know she kept important documents here." "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "Now listen here," Robert started, but I cut him off. "No, you listen. Jennifer left everything to me and the children. Legally, morally, in every way that matters. You have no claim to anything she owned." Patricia laughed, actually laughed. "She was our daughter long before she made her mistake with you. Blood trumps marriage, especially when there are children involved." Something cold and familiar settled in my chest. The feeling I got right before I made someone's problems disappear permanently. But Jennifer's voice echoed in my memory, "Promise me you won't let them take the kids from what we built." I grabbed Robert Morrison by the collar and shoved him toward the door. Patricia followed, David stumbling after them both. "You buried your daughter 12 years ago when you chose hatred over love," I said, my voice deadly calm. "She died to you then, so you get nothing from her now. Don't you dare come back here pretending to grieve for a woman whose heart you broke every single day. I slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Through the glass, I heard Robert shouting something about lawyers and legal action. I heard Patricia's shrill voice demanding I think about what's best for the children. I heard David trying to calm them both down. I didn't care. Let them shout. Let the neighbors hear. Let the whole world know what kind of people Jennifer's family really were. But as I watched their car disappear down my street, I knew this wasn't over. The Morrisons hadn't driven 2 hours at midnight just to be turned away at my door. They'd come prepared for a fight. They just had no idea what kind of fight they'd started. The next morning brought flowers. Dozens of arrangements from Jennifer's colleagues, friends, neighbors. The cards were full of warm memories and genuine grief. People who actually knew my wife, who'd actually loved her, wanting to honor her memory. By afternoon, the flowers were joined by something else, a process server. Marcus Chen Williams? The young woman asked, clipboard in hand. That's me. You're being served with a lawsuit filed by Robert and Patricia Morrison regarding the estate of Jennifer Morrison Chen Williams. I took the papers, thanked her politely, and closed the door. Then I sat at my kitchen table and read through the most audacious legal document I'd ever seen. The Morrisons were claiming that Jennifer's marriage to me was invalid due to undue influence and deception. They argued that as her natural heirs, they had rights to her estate that superseded any will. They wanted custody of Sarah and Michael, claiming I was an unfit parent whose background and associations made me dangerous to the children. Most creative of all, they were claiming that Jennifer's law practice was actually a family business they'd helped fund, a complete lie, and that her client list constituted family intellectual property. It was garbage. Complete, utter garbage that would never hold up in court. But it was also expensive, time-consuming garbage that could drag on for years while the children suffered and Jennifer's memory was dragged through the mud. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in over a decade. Rodriguez. It's Marcus. A pause. I heard about your wife. I'm sorry. Thank you. I need a favor. Personal or professional? I looked at the legal papers scattered across my kitchen table, then up at the ceiling where I could hear my children playing in their rooms, trying to be normal in a world that had suddenly become anything but. Both, I said. Rodriguez met me at a coffee shop downtown, not the same one where I'd met Jennifer, but close enough that I could feel the ghosts of who I used to be stirring to life. He looked exactly the same as he had at my wedding. Gray suit, sunglasses even indoors, the kind of calm that came from spending 30 years in a profession where panic got you killed. Talk to me, he said. I explained about the lawsuit, about the Morrisons' claims, about their midnight visit to my house. Rodriguez listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes in a small leather notebook. They're fishing, he said when I finished. Hoping to find something in your background they can use against you. Will they? He smiled. Marcus Chen Williams, suburban dad and international business consultant? Clean as a whistle. Pays his taxes, volunteers at his kid's school, never even had a speeding ticket. And the other Marcus? Doesn't exist. Never did. The papers were burned a long time ago, the databases scrubbed, the people who might remember. Well, let's just say discretion was always part of our business model. I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. So I'm safe. You're safe. But that doesn't mean this is going to be easy. Family court judges tend to be conservative. They might look at an interracial marriage, at your, let's call it unconventional background story, and decide the nice white grandparents look like a safer bet. The thought of Sarah and Michael being raised by people who'd taught their own daughter that love was conditional, that family came with racial restrictions, made my stomach turn. What do you recommend? Rodriguez closed his notebook. Professionally? Hire the best family lawyer money can buy and fight this in court. It'll take time, cost a fortune, but you'll probably win. And personally? Personally? He leaned forward, his voice dropping. The Morrison family is trying to steal your children and destroy your wife's memory for money. In the old days, people who did that kind of thing had a tendency to develop sudden, overwhelming urges to leave town and never come back. I understood what he was offering. Rodriguez still had connections, still had access to the kind of people who could make problems disappear without leaving fingerprints. One phone call, and the Morrisons would wake up tomorrow with a very clear understanding of what happened to people who threatened Marcus Chen Williams' family. It was tempting. Gosh, it was tempting. I can't, I said. Jennifer made me promise to keep the kids safe, but not that way. She fell in love with who I became, not who I used to be. Rodriguez nodded slowly. Then you'd better find another way to win. Because if these people get custody of your children, Jennifer's sacrifice, choosing love over family, building a life with you despite everything, it'll all be for nothing. I hired Elena Vasquez, the best family attorney in the state. She cost more per hour than most people made in a week, but she had a reputation for winning impossible cases and destroying opposing counsel with surgical precision. This is personal for them, she said after reviewing the case files. They're not just after money. They want to punish you for taking their daughter away. They want to punish her memory for choosing you over them. That makes them dangerous. How dangerous? They're claiming Jennifer was mentally compromised when she made her will. They're going to argue that your marriage was a sham, that you manipulated a vulnerable woman for financial gain. They'll bring up every stereotype about black men preying on white women, wrapped in legal language but designed to push every unconscious bias the judge might have. I felt that cold anger settling in my chest again. What can we do? We prove that Jennifer made her choices with full knowledge and clear intent. We show that her relationship with her family ended because of their racism, not because of any influence from you. We demonstrate that you're a loving father and husband who built a life with Jennifer based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. And if that's not enough? Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we remind the court that the Morrison family disowned their daughter for 12 years and never once tried to have a relationship with their grandchildren. We make them explain why they suddenly care about Sarah and Michael now that there's money involved. The next few weeks were a blur of depositions, document requests, and legal maneuvering. The Morrison family had hired their own team, expensive lawyers from Portland who specialized in asset recovery and family disputes. They played dirty from the start. They hired a private investigator who followed me to school pickup, to the grocery store, to the cemetery where I took the kids to visit Jennifer's grave. They requested financial records going back 15 years, hoping to find some discrepancy they could use against me. They even contacted Sarah's teachers and Michael's soccer coach, fishing for evidence of instability or inappropriate behavior. But the worst part was what they were doing to Jennifer's memory. In court filings, they painted her as mentally weak, easily manipulated, isolated from her loving family by a controlling husband. They claimed she'd been brainwashed, that her successful law practice was actually the result of my criminal connections providing clients. Reading their version of my wife's life was like watching someone desecrate her grave. The Jennifer they described was a victim, a puppet, a woman incapable of making her own decisions. It bore no resemblance to the brilliant, fierce, independent woman I'd loved for 12 years. They're trying to provoke you, Elena warned after a particularly vicious filing that accused me of systematic emotional abuse and financial manipulation. They want you to lose your temper, do something stupid they can use against you. She was right. But knowing they were trying to manipulate me didn't make it any easier to read their lies about Jennifer, their implications about my character, their suggestions that my children would be better off without me. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I was cleaning out Jennifer's home office, boxing up files and organizing documents for the estate, when I found her personal diary. Not a regular journal, Jennifer had never been the type for daily emotional processing, but a leather-bound notebook where she'd recorded important moments, thoughts she wanted to remember. Most of it was what I expected. Notes about the kids' milestones, reflections on cases she'd won or lost, memories from our travels together. But near the end, I found entries from the last few months, written while she was fighting the cancer that would eventually kill her. March 15th, told the kids today. Sarah cried, but she's old enough to understand. Michael keeps asking if the medicine will make me better. I don't know what to tell him. I'm not ready to leave them. I'm not ready to leave Marcus. But if I have to go, I know he'll take care of them. He'll keep them safe from the poison my family would pour into their hearts. March 28th, Mother called today. First time in 2 years. She'd heard about the diagnosis somehow, probably from David's wife, who still talks to Jennifer Hartley from high school. Mother didn't ask about treatment or how I was feeling. She asked about my will, whether Marcus would inherit everything, whether there were provisions for the grandchildren she'd never bother to meet. I hung up on her. April 3rd, had Marcus bring the kids to visit today. The medication makes me so tired, but seeing them laugh, seeing Marcus help Michael with his math homework. This is what love looks like. This is what my parents never understood. Love isn't about blood or tradition or maintaining some perfect image. Love is showing up. Love is staying when things get hard. Love is choosing someone every single day, even when the world tells you not to. April 10th, Marcus thinks I don't know how scared he is. He tries to be strong for me, for the children, but I see it in his eyes. He's terrified of losing me, terrified of raising Sarah and Michael alone, terrified that somehow he won't be enough. But he is enough. He's everything. If my parents try to take the children after I'm gone, and they will, because money and pride matter more to them than love, I pray Marcus remembers that. I pray he fights for our family the way he fought for our marriage. There were more entries, each one making it clearer that Jennifer had anticipated exactly what was happening now. She'd known her parents would come for the children, known they'd try to destroy the life she'd built, known they'd use her death as an opportunity to finally punish her for choosing love over their expectations. But the most important entry was dated just 2 weeks before she died. April 25th, asked Elena to add a codicil to my will today. If my parents or any member of my birth family attempts to gain custody of Sarah and Michael, they forfeit any right to ever see the children again. Marcus thinks I'm being harsh, but he doesn't understand. My parents didn't disown me when I married him. They disowned me when they decided their hatred was more important than their daughter. They made their choice 12 years ago. I'm just making sure they can't unmake it now. I called Elena immediately. This changes everything, she said after reading the diary entries. Jennifer anticipated this lawsuit, planned for it, even. The codicil, she added, makes it clear that any attempt to challenge your custody or interfere with the children's lives would permanently bar her family from any future contact. Is that legal? It's unusual, but yes. Parents have the right to determine who has access to their children, even posthumously. And Jennifer's diary entries provide clear evidence of her mental state and reasoning. She wasn't being vindictive, she was protecting her children from people she knew would hurt them. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November. Elena had prepared extensively, gathering character witnesses, financial records, evidence of the Morrisons' 12-year abandonment of their daughter and grandchildren. But the night before the hearing, something happened that changed everything. I was putting Michael to bed when he asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Daddy, why don't Mommy's parents want to see us?" I sat on the edge of his bed, trying to find words that an 8-year-old could understand. "What do you mean, buddy?" "Tommy at school says his grandparents come to all his games and take him to the movies and stuff. But Mommy's parents never came to see us. Even when Mommy was sick. Are they mad at us?" Sarah appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. At 13, she was old enough to understand more than I wanted her to. "They're not mad at you," I said carefully. "They're mad at me. They didn't like that Mommy married someone who looked different from them." "Because you're black?" Sarah asked. "Yes." Michael frowned. "That's stupid." "Yes, it is." Sarah came into the room and sat on the other side of Michael's bed. "Are they going to try to take us away from you?" I looked at my children, Jennifer's children, our children, and made a decision that would have horrified the man I used to be. I told them the truth. "They're going to try," I said. "They filed a lawsuit claiming that they should take care of you instead of me. But I want you to know that I will never let that happen. You belong with me. This is your home. We're a family. What if the judge says we have to go with them?" Michael asked. "That's not going to happen." "But what if it does?" I pulled both children close, breathing in the scent of their shampoo, feeling the weight of Jennifer's promises settling on my shoulders. "Then we'll figure it out together," I said. "But I promise you, no matter what happens in that courtroom, I will never stop fighting for you. You're stuck with me, whether you like it or not." Sarah laughed despite her tears. "We like it, Dad. We really like it." The hearing began with the Morrison family's attorney painting me as an unfit parent with a mysterious background and dangerous associations. He implied that Jennifer had been isolated from her loving family by a manipulative husband who'd used her for financial gain. Elena responded by putting Jennifer's colleagues on the stand. They testified about her intelligence, her independence, her fierce love for her husband and children. They described a woman who'd built a successful practice through her own efforts, who'd spoken proudly of her family, who'd never shown any signs of being controlled or manipulated. Then Elena introduced the diary. The courtroom was silent as she read Jennifer's words aloud. Her anticipation of this exact situation. Her clear, uncompromised mental state. Her deliberate decision to protect her children from people who'd already rejected them once. The Morrison family's attorney tried to object, claiming the diary entries were hearsay, but Judge Catherine Wheeler, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, allowed them as evidence of Jennifer's state of mind and testamentary intent. "Mrs. Morrison," the judge said, addressing Patricia directly. "You had no contact with your daughter for 12 years prior to her death. Is that correct?" Patricia shifted uncomfortably. "She chose to cut us out of her life." "Did you attempt to reconcile? Did you reach out to her, especially when she became ill?" We respected her decision to distance herself from the family." "And during those 12 years, did you have any relationship with your grandchildren?" "No, but did you send birthday cards, Christmas gifts, attend school events, attempt to be part of their lives in any way?" Patricia's lawyer started to object, but she cut him off. "No. We didn't. But now, 3 months after your daughter's death, you believe you should have custody of these children. Can you explain why your parental instincts have suddenly awakened?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Patricia looked at her husband, then at her lawyer, then back at the judge. "They're our grandchildren," she said finally. "They belong with family." "Mr. Morrison," Judge Wheeler turned to Robert. "Do you have any evidence that Mr. Chen Williams is an unfit parent?" His background is questionable. We don't know where he came from, what he did before he met Jennifer. Has he ever been convicted of a crime?" "No, but has he ever been charged with a crime?" "Not that we know of, but has Child Protective Services ever investigated him for abuse or neglect?" "No." "Are his children healthy, well-educated, emotionally stable?" Robert's jaw tightened. "That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Mr. Morrison? For a moment, the mask slipped. All the careful legal language, all the pretense about what was best for the children, all the implied concerns about my background and fitness as a parent fell away. The point is that he took our daughter away from us, Robert said, his voice harsh with 12 years of suppressed rage. The point is that she chose him over her own family. The point is that those children are all we have left of Jennifer, and they shouldn't be raised by. He stopped himself, but it was too late. By whom, Mr. Morrison? Judge Wheeler's voice was ice cold. Please finish your sentence. Robert Morrison looked around the courtroom like a trapped animal. His lawyer was frantically shaking his head. Patricia had gone pale. Even David, sitting in the back row, was staring at his father with horror. I didn't mean. You didn't mean what, exactly? That these children shouldn't be raised by their black father? Is that what you were about to say? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, could feel Sarah's hand slip into mine where we sat in the gallery. Elena had warned me this might happen, that their true motivations would eventually surface, but hearing it out loud still hit like a physical blow. Your Honor, the Morrison family attorney tried to intervene. My client misspoke. Did he? Judge Wheeler turned her attention to Patricia. Mrs. Morrison, is race a factor in your desire for custody? Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. We just think. We believe that children should be with their own people. With family who understands their background, their heritage. Their white heritage, you mean? Yes, I mean, no, I mean. Judge Wheeler held up a hand for silence. I've heard enough. This court will recess for 30 minutes while I review the evidence and prepare my ruling. Elena found me in the hallway outside the courtroom, pacing like a caged animal. How did I do? She asked. You were brilliant. Jennifer would be proud. This isn't over yet. Wheeler's a good judge, but family court can be unpredictable. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. In 30 minutes, a stranger would decide whether my children stayed with me or went to live with people who'd just admitted in open court that their objection to me was based on the color of my skin. For the first time since this whole mess started, I let myself think about Rodriguez's offer. One phone call. The Morrison family would wake up tomorrow morning with a sudden, overwhelming desire to drop their lawsuit and never darken my door again. No one would get hurt, not permanently, but the message would be clear. My phone buzzed. A text from Rodriguez, watching the news. Court TV picked up the story. How you holding up? I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, still fighting the good fight. Proud of you, kid. Jennifer would be too. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Wheeler's expression was unreadable. She'd set a stack of papers on her desk and was reviewing them one final time. Before I deliver my ruling, she said, I want to address something that occurred before the recess. This court does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. The suggestion that children should be placed with guardians based on racial preferences is not only legally invalid but morally reprehensible. She looked directly at the Morrison family. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, your testimony today has revealed the true motivation behind this custody petition. This is not about the welfare of Sarah and Michael Chen Williams. This is about your desire to control and possess what you perceive as your property, and to punish their father for the crime of loving your daughter. Robert Morrison's face was red with suppressed rage. Patricia was crying quietly into a handkerchief. David had his head in his hands. Furthermore, Judge Wheeler continued, the evidence presented by the children's father demonstrates not only his fitness as a parent but his deep commitment to honoring their mother's memory and values. The diary entries from Jennifer Chen Williams paint a clear picture of a woman who made deliberate, informed decisions about her children's future welfare. She picked up one of the documents on her desk. The codicil to Mrs. Chen Williams will states explicitly that any attempt by her birth family to gain custody of her children would result in permanent termination of their right to contact. This was not written in anger or spite, but as a protective measure based on her intimate knowledge of her family's character. Elena squeezed my hand under the table. Therefore, this court finds that the petition for custody filed by Robert and Patricia Morrison is without merit and is hereby denied. Furthermore, in accordance with the explicit wishes of the children's deceased mother, the Morrison family is hereby barred from any future contact with Sarah and Michael Chen Williams unless specifically requested by the children themselves after they reach the age of majority. The gavel came down like thunder. The aftermath was chaos. The Morrison family attorney was already talking about appeals, but Elena assured me they had no grounds. The case law was clear, and Judge Wheeler's ruling was airtight. Patricia Morrison collapsed in the hallway, wailing about losing her grandchildren. Robert stood over her, his face a mask of cold fury, staring at me like he was memorizing my features for future use. This isn't over, he said quietly as I passed. I stopped and turned to face him. For just a moment, I let him see past the suburban dad facade, past the careful construction of Marcus Chen Williams, the business consultant and youth soccer coach. I let him see the shadows that lurked underneath, the part of me that Rodriguez knew, the part that could make problems disappear without leaving fingerprints. Yes, it is, I said, my voice carrying undertones that made him take an involuntary step backward. It's over because Jennifer said it's over. It's over because a judge said it's over. But most importantly, it's over because I'm saying it's over. And trust me, Mr. Morrison, you don't want to test what happens if you try to prove me wrong. He opened his mouth to reply, but something in my eyes changed his mind. Instead, he helped Patricia to her feet and walked away without another word. David lingered for a moment, looking like he wanted to say something. I'm sorry, he said finally. About all of this. Jennifer was. She was a good person. She deserved better. Yes, she did. The kids. If they ever want to know about her childhood, about who she was before. I have photo albums, stories. I studied his face, looking for deception, for hidden motives. All I saw was genuine regret and a grief that looked suspiciously like love. I'll tell them, I said. When they're older. When they ask. I'll let them know you offered. He nodded and walked away, leaving me alone in the courthouse hallway with Elena and the weight of everything we'd just survived. That evening, I took Sarah and Michael out for pizza. We went to their favorite place, a family-owned Italian restaurant where the owner's kids ran around between tables and nobody cared if Michael got sauce all over his shirt. So we get to stay with you? Sarah asked, twirling spaghetti around her fork. Forever and always. And we don't have to see those people again? I hesitated. Not unless you want to, when you're older. The choice will be yours. Michael looked up from his pizza. I don't want to see them. They were mean to Mommy. They were scared, I said carefully. Sometimes when people are scared of things they don't understand, they do mean things. That doesn't make it right, but... But what? I thought about Jennifer's diary entries, about her hope that love could overcome hatred, about her belief that our children could grow up free from the poison that had infected her own childhood. But your mom believed that love is stronger than fear. She believed that you too would grow up knowing how to choose love even when it's hard, even when the world tells you to choose something else. Sarah smiled. Like she did when she chose you. Like she did when she chose all of us. 3 weeks later, I was cleaning out the last of Jennifer's personal effects when I found something that stopped me cold. Tucked inside her jewelry box, behind the pearl earrings she'd worn on our wedding day, was a small envelope with my name written on it in her careful handwriting. Inside was a letter dated 2 months before she died. My dearest Marcus, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and my parents have done exactly what I knew they would do. I'm sorry you had to fight them alone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to stand beside you one more time. But I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not just for winning, though I hope you won, but for fighting with honor. For staying true to the man I fell in love with even when it would have been easier to become someone else. I know you could have made this problem disappear in other ways. I know there are parts of your past that would have provided alternative solutions. The fact that you chose the hard path, the right path, tells me everything I need to know about the kind of father our children will have. You saved me, Marcus. Not from my family's hatred, that would have destroyed me eventually with or without you. You saved me from becoming like them. You showed me what love actually looks like, what it feels like to be chosen every single day not because of what I could give you but because of who I was. Now I need you to save our children from that same hatred. Keep them safe. Keep them whole. Keep them free to love whoever they choose, whoever they are, however they decide to build their lives. And someday, when enough time has passed and the wounds aren't so fresh, maybe show them pictures of who their grandparents were before fear turned them into strangers. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because our children deserve to understand that love is always a choice, and hate is always a loss. I love you. I've loved you since the moment you smiled at me in that coffee shop. I'll love you until the stars burn out and beyond. Forever yours, Jennifer. P.S. Check the safe deposit box at First National. Box 847. The key is taped under your desk drawer. I left something there for the children, for when they're older. The next morning, I went to the bank. Box 847 contained 2 items, a thick manila envelope and a small wooden box that looked handmade. The envelope contained letters. Dozens of them. Letters Jennifer had written to Sarah and Michael over the years, to be opened on birthdays, graduations, weddings, the birth of their own children. Letters full of advice, encouragement, memories, and unconditional love. The wooden box held something even more precious, Jennifer's engagement ring, not the one I'd given her, but the one her grandmother had left her. The same grandmother whose dress she'd worn at our wedding, whose memory her parents had used to try to hurt her even in death. There was a note inside the box, for Sarah, on her wedding day. So she knows that love is worth fighting for. 6 months later, life had settled into a new normal. Sarah had joined the debate team and was already talking about following her mother's footsteps into law. Michael had discovered a talent for piano and spent his afternoons filling the house with music that would have made Jennifer cry with joy. I still missed her every day. Still reached for her hand in bed, still saved funny stories to tell her when I got home from work, still caught myself buying her favorite coffee at the grocery store. But we were healing. All of us. The Morrison family never contacted us again. I heard through Elena that they'd moved to Arizona, apparently deciding that a change of scenery was in order. David sent a Christmas card that year, just his signature, no message, but it felt like an olive branch extended across a chasm too wide to bridge. I never called Rodriguez back. Never took him up on his offer of alternative solutions. The man Jennifer had loved was strong enough to protect his family without becoming the man he used to be. But sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet and the children were sleeping safely upstairs, I allowed myself to remember what it felt like to be someone people crossed the street to avoid. Someone who solved problems permanently and left no traces behind. Not because I missed it. But because knowing it was still there, that capability, that willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect the people I loved, made me feel safer in a world that had already taken too much from me. Jennifer had saved me from my past. Now her memory would keep me anchored to the future she'd envisioned for our children. A future where love mattered more than blood, where family was defined by choice rather than genetics, where two kids could grow up knowing they were cherished not despite who their father was, but because of everything he'd become for them. Some battles are won with violence. Some are won with money. Some are won with power or influence or fear. But the battle for my family's future was won with something much simpler and infinitely more powerful: the truth. The truth about who Jennifer was, who I was, who we'd been together, and what we'd built in defiance of people who thought love should have limitations. In the end, that was enough. It had to be enough. Because anything else would have dishonored the woman who'd saved my life by choosing to share hers with me, and I'd made her a promise I intended to keep. Epilogue. Sarah is 25 now, a prosecutor in the district attorney's office, fighting for justice with the same fierce intelligence her mother possessed. She wears Jennifer's engagement ring on her right hand and has never asked me about the Morrison family. Michael is 20, a music major at Berkeley, composing pieces that blend classical structure with jazz improvisation in ways that shouldn't work but somehow do. He has his mother's laugh and her ability to find beauty in unexpected places. Neither of them has ever met their maternal grandparents. Neither has ever asked to. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice, keeping that door closed. But then I remember Patricia Morrison sneering about Jennifer's mistake and Robert Morrison's barely contained rage, and I know that some doors are meant to stay shut. Jennifer was right about love being stronger than fear. She was right about our children growing up free from the poison that infected her childhood. She was right about the kind of man I could choose to be, even when choosing was hard. She was right about everything that mattered. And in the end, that was enough to win a war I'd never wanted to fight, using weapons I'd never known I possessed: truth, love, and the unshakable belief that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters most. Story 2. I spent $1,500 on matching custom Christmas pajamas for our entire extended family photo. When everyone arrived and put them on, my sister clinked her glass and announced, "Yeah, these are nice, but you don't match our status, so respectfully, get out of the photo." Everyone laughed and nodded in agreement. My own mother added, "Honey, this is a family tradition, and you're just the in-law." I stayed quiet, simply left without saying a word, and took all my gifts for them back with me. That was Christmas morning. By evening, my phone was exploding with messages as they opened the empty boxes I'd left under the tree, each containing just a photo of the actual gifts I'd purchased. "Look, I need to tell you something, and you're probably going to think I'm either a genius or completely unhinged. Maybe both. But what happened last Christmas morning, what I did after my own family basically told me I wasn't worth standing in a photograph with them, well, let's just say it changed everything. I spent $1,500 on matching Christmas pajamas. Custom made, mind you. Soft flannel with this gorgeous forest green base and elegant gold piping, each set personalized with individual names embroidered in flowing script. I'm talking about the kind of pajamas you see in those perfect family Instagram posts, the ones that make you feel inadequate about your own holiday traditions. Except these weren't for some staged social media moment. These were supposed to be for us. My family. The irony isn't lost on me now. My name's David, by the way. 34, married to Rebecca for 6 years, and until Christmas morning 2024, I genuinely believed I was part of something bigger than myself. You know that feeling when you're surrounded by people you've known your entire life, people who've watched you grow up, who've celebrated your victories and comforted you through losses. That warm, unshakable certainty that no matter what happens in the world, these people have your back? Yeah, well, turns out I was living in a fantasy. The pajamas were Rebecca's idea, actually. She'd seen similar ones at her coworker's house during their holiday party and came home absolutely glowing with excitement. "David, we have to do this for the family photo this year," she said, bouncing on her toes like a kid who'd just discovered Christmas morning. "Imagine how amazing we'll all look together. Your mom would absolutely love it." My mom. Right. Let me paint you a picture of Margaret Chen, because yes, I took Rebecca's last name when we married, which should have been my first clue about how this family viewed me. Mom is 68, barely 5 feet tall, but she commands a room like she's 7 feet of pure authority. She built a successful real estate empire from nothing, starting with a single rental property in 1982 and turning it into a portfolio worth millions. She's the kind of woman who wears pearls to the grocery store and somehow makes it look casual instead of pretentious. I've always admired her strength, her business sense, her ability to make difficult decisions without flinching. Growing up, she taught me that family comes first, that loyalty isn't just a word but a way of life, that the bonds between us were stronger than any challenge we might face. Funny how quickly those lessons can crumble. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the planning phase, because that's where the real knife twisting began, though I was too naive to see it at the time. When I called Mom to tell her about the pajama idea, her response was measured. That should have been warning sign number 2. Custom pajamas, she repeated, like she was tasting unfamiliar food. How much are we talking about, David? Don't worry about the cost, Mom. Rebecca and I want to handle it. Consider it our gift to the family. There was a pause. I was standing in our kitchen, watching Rebecca arrange flowers in a vase, completely oblivious to the subtle shift in my mother's tone. Well, that's very generous of you both, Mom finally said. I suppose we should discuss the family photo arrangements. Have you considered the photographer? The location? I was thinking we could do it at your house, like always. The living room with a big tree. Another pause. Longer this time. Actually, David, your sister Melissa has been coordinating the photo this year. She's hired a professional photographer. Someone who specializes in, well, let's call them elevated family portraits. Elevated. Even now, that word makes my stomach clench. Melissa, my older sister by 3 years, who married an investment banker and moved into a house that's basically a small mansion. Melissa, who somehow turned her marketing degree into a lifestyle brand that I still don't fully understand but which apparently generates enough income to justify a new BMW every 2 years. Melissa, who has never met a social situation she couldn't orchestrate to her advantage. I should have called her directly, but I was so excited about the pajamas that I just assumed she'd be as enthusiastic as Rebecca and I were. Instead, I focused on getting the sizing right, collecting measurements from everyone through a group text that was met with varying degrees of cooperation. Uncle Frank responded immediately with his measurements and a string of laugh-cry emojis. This is going to be hilarious, he texted. I haven't worn matching anything since my Navy days. My cousin Sarah sent her measurements along with a photo of her 2 kids, ages 6 and 8, making silly faces. The kids are so excited. They keep asking when the fancy matching clothes are coming. Even my usually reserved Aunt Linda participated, though her text was characteristically brief, medium for both Robert and me. Thank you for organizing this. But Melissa? Radio silence for 3 days. When she finally responded, it was with a simple got it, thanks after I'd sent 2 follow-up messages asking if she needed help with her family's measurements. The pajamas arrived 2 weeks before Christmas, and they were perfect. I'm not exaggerating, they were museum-quality beautiful. The embroidery work was flawless, the fabric was luxurious without being gaudy, and each set came in its own elegant gift box with tissue paper and ribbon. Rebecca actually teared up when she saw them laid out on our dining room table. David, these are incredible, she whispered, running her fingers along the gold piping on her set. Your family is going to be so touched that we did this. I called Mom to let her know the pajamas had arrived and offered to bring them over early so everyone could try theirs on and make sure the sizing was right. Oh, that won't be necessary, she said quickly. Just bring them Christmas morning. It'll be more fun as a surprise. A surprise. Right. Christmas morning dawned gray and cold, the kind of December day that makes you grateful for warm houses and hot coffee. Rebecca and I loaded up our car with the pajama boxes, plus all the gifts we'd spent weeks selecting for everyone. I'd gotten Mom a beautiful jade bracelet that I'd seen her admiring at an antique shop. For Melissa, a limited edition cookbook by her favorite chef. For her husband Brad, a bottle of whiskey that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. For the kids, toys and books that I'd researched obsessively to make sure they were age-appropriate and educational. You know what the worst part is? I was genuinely excited. Driving over to Mom's house, windows down despite the cold because Rebecca wanted to smell the winter air, Christmas music playing softly on the radio, I felt this deep sense of satisfaction. This was going to be the Christmas that everyone remembered. The year David and Rebecca made everything special. I parked in Mom's driveway behind Melissa's BMW and Uncle Frank's pickup truck. The house looked like something from a holiday movie, white lights twinkling along the roofline, wreaths on every window, that massive blue spruce tree visible through the front window, decorated with 3 decades worth of collected ornaments. Ready? Rebecca asked, squeezing my hand. More than ready. We walked up the front steps, arms full of boxes, and I could hear voices and laughter coming from inside. Family. My people. The thought made me smile as I rang the doorbell. Melissa answered, and I swear, something flickered across her face when she saw us. Not happiness. Not excitement. Something calculating. But it was gone so fast I convinced myself I'd imagined it. David. Rebecca. Merry Christmas. She hugged us both, and her embrace felt normal. Warm. Come in, come in. Everyone's here. We walked into the living room, and it was like stepping into a Norman Rockwell painting. Mom was sitting in her favorite armchair, elegant as always in a cream-colored sweater and brown slacks. Uncle Frank was sprawled on the couch in jeans and a red flannel shirt, already working on what appeared to be his second cup of coffee. Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert were perched on the love seat, both dressed in what I can only describe as Christmas conservative nice but not flashy. Sarah's kids were on the floor, building something elaborate with Legos, while Sarah herself stood near the tree, looking relaxed in dark jeans and a festive sweater. And then there was Melissa's family. Brad was wearing slacks and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my car payment. Their twins, Emma and Jake, were dressed like they were heading to a country club brunch. Even at 11 years old, they somehow radiated an aura of expensive confidence. All right, everyone. I announced, setting down the boxes with a dramatic flourish. Time for the big reveal. I started distributing the pajama boxes, watching faces light up as people read their personalized labels. Uncle Frank let out a genuine whoop of delight when he opened his box. Oh smokes, David, these are beautiful. He held up his pajama top, examining the embroidery. Look at this craftsmanship. Sarah's kids immediately started begging to put theirs on, and Aunt Linda was nodding approvingly as she felt the fabric quality. Mom opened her box more slowly, but I caught what looked like a genuine smile when she saw her name embroidered in that flowing script. These must have cost a fortune, she murmured. Don't worry about that, I said, feeling proud and generous. Rebecca and I wanted to do something special for everyone. Melissa opened her family's boxes last, and I watched her face carefully. She held up her pajama top, examined the embroidery, felt the fabric between her fingers. For a moment, I thought I saw appreciation there. They're very nice, David, she said finally. Very thoughtful. Something about the way she said thoughtful made my chest tighten, but before I could analyze it further, Rebecca clapped her hands together. All right, everyone, let's get changed. The photographer will be here in an hour, and we want to make sure everything is perfect. That's when things started to go sideways. Oh, about that, Melissa said, setting her pajama box down on the coffee table. I should mention that we've made a slight change to the photo plan. The room got quiet. Not Christmas morning peaceful quiet. Tension quiet. What kind of change? I asked. Melissa smiled, but it wasn't her real smile. It was her I'm about to deliver bad news but I'm going to pretend it's good news smile. I'd seen it before, usually right before she explained why she couldn't make it to some family event or why her kids couldn't participate in some family tradition. Well, Brad and I have been talking with Mom, and we think it would be better if this year's family photo focused on the core family members. I felt Rebecca's hand find mine, her fingers cold despite the warmth of the house. I'm not sure what you mean, I said slowly. The pajamas are lovely, David, really. But they don't quite match our family's aesthetic for this particular photo. We've already coordinated our outfits with something that better reflects our current status. Current status. Those words hit me like a physical blow. Uncle Frank was frowning now, and Sarah had gone very still near the Christmas tree. Even the kids had stopped playing with their Legos, sensing the shift in adult energy. Melissa, Mom said quietly, perhaps we should discuss this. No, it's fine, Melissa interrupted, her voice getting stronger, more confident. David, you and Rebecca are wonderful, and we appreciate the thought behind these pajamas. But honestly, they're just not us. They're not our level. Our level. I felt something cold spreading through my chest, like ice water in my veins. Rebecca's grip on my hand tightened. I'm sorry, what exactly are you saying? And then Melissa did something I'll remember for the rest of my life. She picked up her champagne glass from the side table, because of course she was drinking champagne at 10 in the morning, and clinked it with her fingernail to get everyone's attention. Yeah, these are nice, she announced to the room, gesturing at the pajama boxes, but you don't match our status, so respectfully, get out of the photo. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking, could hear one of the kids breathing, could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. And then, impossibly, people started laughing. Not uncomfortable laughter. Not nervous laughter. Agreeing laughter. Uncle Frank chuckled and shook his head. She's got a point, you know. Aunt Linda nodded. It is important to maintain certain standards. Sarah, who I'd helped through her divorce, who I'd babysat for countless times, who I'd considered one of my closest friends, actually giggled. But the worst part, the part that still makes me feel sick when I think about it, was when my mother cleared her throat and spoke. "Honey," she said, and her voice was gentle but firm, like she was explaining something obvious to a child, "this is a family tradition, and you're just the in-law. Just the in-law. I want you to understand something. I've been part of this family for 6 years as Rebecca's husband, but I've known these people my entire life. I've spent Christmases with them, Thanksgivings, birthdays, graduations, anniversaries. I've held their babies, helped them move, listened to their problems, celebrated their successes. I've considered myself not just connected to them through marriage, but genuinely, deeply loved by them. And in one moment, with one sentence, my mother, the woman who raised me, who taught me about loyalty and family bonds, reduced me to just an in-law." The room was still chuckling, people nodding in agreement like this was all perfectly reasonable. Like I was being silly for expecting to be included in my own family's Christmas photo. I looked at Rebecca, and her face was white with shock. Her mouth was opening and closing like she wanted to say something but couldn't find words. I could have screamed. I could have argued. I could have demanded explanations or begged for reconsideration. I could have reminded them of every favor I'd done, every holiday I'd helped coordinate, every time I'd dropped everything to be there for them. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I stayed quiet. I reached down, picked up my car keys from the side table, and walked calmly to where I'd left all their Christmas presents. Without saying a word, I gathered up every single gift, the jade bracelet, the cookbook, the expensive whiskey, the carefully selected toys and books. I loaded them into my arms like I was cleaning up after a party. Rebecca followed me, her face still stunned. "David, what are you?" "We're leaving," I said quietly. "But maybe we can talk to them, maybe." "No." I looked at her, and I think she saw something in my expression that made her stop arguing. "We're leaving now." I walked back through the living room, past my family who were now chatting amongst themselves about photo angles and timing, like the conversation about my status had never happened. Like I was already gone. Mom looked up as I passed. "David, you don't have to leave. You can stay for breakfast." I paused at the front door, arms full of presents, and looked back at her. "Can I stay for the photo?" She hesitated. "Well, that's what I thought." We left. I loaded all the gifts into our car while Rebecca sat in the passenger seat, staring at the house like she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. "David," she whispered as I started the engine, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea they felt that way." Neither did I. We drove home in silence, and I spent the rest of Christmas morning doing something that felt both petty and necessary. I took every single gift I'd bought for them and photographed it. The jade bracelet against black velvet. The cookbook open to a particularly beautiful recipe page. The whiskey bottle with light streaming through it. The toys arranged artfully on our dining room table. Then I printed those photos on our home printer, put each photo in a gift box with tissue paper and ribbon, and drove back to Mom's house. I could hear voices and laughter through the front door as I quietly placed the boxes under their tree. By evening, my phone started buzzing. The first call was from Sarah. "David, what the heck?" I opened my box and it's just a photo of earrings. Then Melissa, "This is incredibly immature. Where are the actual gifts?" Then Mom, "David, I think there's been some confusion with the presents. Could you call me back?" I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I turned off my phone and spent Christmas evening with Rebecca, eating Chinese takeout and watching old movies. It should have been depressing, but honestly, it was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had in years. The calls and texts continued for days. At first, they were confused and slightly annoyed. Then they became angry. Then, surprisingly, some of them became apologetic. Uncle Frank left a voicemail that made me actually laugh. "Okay, nephew, I get it. We screwed up. That was a heck of a power move with the photos. Call me back." But it was Mom's message, left 3 days after Christmas, that really got to me. "David, I need you to understand that we were just trying to maintain certain standards for the photo. It wasn't personal. You're family, of course you're family. But sometimes family means understanding your place. Call me back. We need to talk about this." Understanding my place. Even in her apology, she couldn't help but reinforce the hierarchy. I did call her back, eventually. We had a long conversation that started with her explaining how the family photo was important for business reasons and how certain appearances needed to be maintained and how I should understand the bigger picture. "Mom," I finally interrupted, "do you love me?" "Of course I love you. What kind of question is that? Do you respect me?" A pause. "David, this isn't about respect. It's exactly about respect. You told me I was just an in-law. You laughed when Melissa said I didn't match your status. You excluded me from a family photo because my presence somehow lowered the quality of your image. You're being dramatic. Am I? Let me ask you something else. When you look at me, what do you see?" Another pause. Longer this time. I see my son who's doing his best but who maybe doesn't quite understand how the world works. And there it was. The truth, finally spoken aloud. Right, I said. Well, here's what I understand about how the world works. Family isn't about status or appearances or business advantages. It's about loyalty and love and showing up for each other. And if you can't see that, then maybe you're right. Maybe I don't understand how your world works. David, I'm not asking you to change, Mom. I'm not asking anyone to change. But I'm also not going to keep pretending that being treated like a second-class family member is normal or acceptable. We've talked several times since then, and slowly, carefully, things have started to shift. Not dramatically, this isn't a story where everyone suddenly sees the error of their ways and tearfully apologizes. But there have been small changes. Mom invited Rebecca and me to lunch last month, just the three of us, no agenda, no photo opportunities. She asked about my work, really listened to my answers, and for the first time in years, I felt like she was seeing me as a person rather than as someone who needed to be managed. Melissa called a few weeks ago to tell me that Brad got a promotion, and somehow the conversation stayed focused on their good news instead of turning into a subtle comparison with my career. When I congratulated them, she actually said, "Thanks, David. That means a lot coming from you. Small steps. But steps." The real change, though, has been in me. I spent 34 years trying to earn a place in a family that I was supposedly already part of. I bent myself into shapes that weren't natural, trying to fit into their vision of who I should be, trying to match their standards and expectations. The Christmas pajama incident, because that's what Rebecca and I call it now, taught me something important. You can't love people into loving you back the way you want to be loved. You can't sacrifice your dignity to maintain relationships that fundamentally don't respect who you are. But here's the thing that surprises me most. I'm not angry anymore. Those first few weeks after Christmas, I was furious. I felt betrayed and humiliated and hurt in ways I didn't even know were possible. But as time passed, the anger faded into something else. Clarity, maybe. Or just acceptance. They showed me who they are, and I believe them. That doesn't mean I've written them off or that we can't have a relationship. It just means I understand the boundaries now. I know what to expect and what not to expect. I know my place in their world, and more importantly, I know my worth isn't determined by that place. Rebecca and I hosted our own Christmas gathering this year. Nothing fancy, just some friends from work, a couple of neighbors, Rebecca's college roommate who doesn't have family nearby. We wore normal clothes, took normal photos, and had an absolutely wonderful time. No status considerations, no careful orchestration, no hierarchy to navigate. Just people who genuinely enjoy each other's company, sharing food and laughter and the simple pleasure of being together. Uncle Frank actually showed up halfway through the evening. He'd heard about our gathering from one of our mutual neighbors and decided to stop by. He stayed for 3 hours, charming everyone with his Navy stories and helping Rebecca's friend fix her car in our driveway. As he was leaving, he pulled me aside. "This is what Christmas is supposed to feel like," he said. "Thanks for reminding me. I still have those custom pajamas, by the way. All 15 sets, still in their beautiful boxes. Rebecca suggested we donate them or sell them, but I can't bring myself to do either. They sit in our guest room closet, a reminder of a lesson that cost me $1,500 and a lot of heartache to learn. Sometimes I take them out and look at them. They really are beautiful. The embroidery is perfect, the fabric is luxurious, the whole concept was genuinely thoughtful. They would have made for stunning family photos. But you know what? The photos we took at our own Christmas gathering, with everyone in their regular clothes, laughing and being themselves without worrying about appearances or status or matching anyone's level, those photos are hanging in our hallway now. And every time I pass them, I smile. Because those photos show something the custom pajamas never could have captured, the difference between looking like a family and actually being one. I learned something else, too. Sometimes the best gift you can give people is showing them exactly who they are. Not who they pretend to be, not who they think they should be, but who they reveal themselves to be when they think no one important is watching. My family thought I wasn't important enough to watch their behavior around. They thought I was safe to dismiss, safe to humiliate, safe to treat as lesser. They thought I would accept it because I always had before. The photos in those gift boxes weren't just pictures of presents. They were mirrors, reflecting back the emptiness of relationships built on status and appearances rather than genuine care. Some of them looked in those mirrors and didn't like what they saw. Others looked and decided the mirrors were the problem, not the reflection. Either way, mission accomplished. I guess the final thing I want to say is this: if you're reading this story and recognizing yourself in it, if you've been the person trying to earn love from people who treat you like an afterthought, if you've been bending yourself into impossible shapes to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold you, you don't have to keep doing that. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You don't have to accept being treated as just anything, just an in-law, just a friend, just a coworker, just whatever diminishing label people use to justify treating you poorly. You are worth more than that. You deserve better than that. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved is to stop pretending that better than that isn't what you need. The custom pajamas are still in our guest room closet. Sometimes Rebecca jokes that we should wear them for our anniversary photos, just the two of us. Matching outfits for people who actually match, she says. Maybe we will. Maybe it's time those beautiful pajamas got to be part of a real family photo after all. Just not the family photo I originally planned. But let me tell you about what happened 6 months after Christmas, because that's when things got really interesting. I was at work. I'm a project manager for a mid-sized construction company, nothing glamorous but steady and decent paying, when my phone rang. Mom's number. I almost didn't answer, but we'd been making progress in our conversations, so I picked up. David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Her voice sounded different. Strained. Like she'd been crying, which was impossible because I'd never seen my mother cry. Not once in 34 years. What's wrong? Did you know that Melissa's been telling people that the reason you weren't in the Christmas photo was because you refused to participate? I sat down hard in my desk chair. What? She's been posting on social media about how some family members chose not to participate in traditions and how disappointing it is when people prioritize their ego over family unity. She's made herself sound like the victim, David. She's made us all sound like victims of your selfishness. The room started spinning a little. Mom, you were there. You know exactly what happened. I know what happened in our living room. But I'm starting to realize I don't know what's been happening outside our living room. That's when she told me about the narrative Melissa had been crafting. According to her version of events, she'd graciously included me in all the Christmas planning, had been nothing but supportive of my pajama idea, and had been heartbroken when I threw a tantrum and stormed out because I couldn't handle not being the center of attention. She'd posted the family photo, the one they took after I left, with a caption about celebrating with the family members who understand what togetherness really means. The comments were full of sympathy for poor Melissa, having to deal with difficult relatives during the holidays. But that's not. I started, then stopped. Of course that was her version. Melissa had always been masterful at rewriting history to cast herself as the hero or victim, depending on what served her better. I know it's not the truth, David. And I'm ashamed that it took me this long to see what she's been doing. Not just with Christmas, but for years. That phone call led to the most honest conversation my mother and I had ever had. She told me about things I'd never known, how Melissa had always been jealous of the relationship Mom and I had, how she'd spent years making subtle comments about my career, my marriage, my choices. How she'd positioned herself as the successful daughter while painting me as the one who never quite lived up to his potential. I thought I was being fair, Mom said. I thought I was treating both my children equally. But I see now that I was letting Melissa set the terms for everything. I was so proud of her success, her confidence, that I didn't notice how she was using that confidence to diminish you. The conversation lasted 2 hours. By the end, we were both emotionally drained, but something had shifted. Not fixed, years of damage don't heal in one phone call, but shifted. What do you want me to do about the social media posts? Mom asked. Nothing, I said. Let her have her version of the story. The people who matter know the truth. But Mom surprised me. 3 days later, she posted her own photo on social media. It was a picture of the jade bracelet I'd gotten her for Christmas, the one that had ended up as just a photo in a gift box. She was wearing it, and the caption read, "Sometimes the most meaningful gifts come from the most meaningful people, even when we're too foolish to recognize it at the time. Grateful for my son David, who teaches me something new about grace and dignity every day. The best gifts aren't always the ones that end up under the tree." It was subtle, but anyone paying attention would understand. Melissa certainly did. She called me that evening, furious. "What did you say to Mom?" "Hello to you too, Melissa. Don't play games with me. She's posting cryptic messages about you, she's wearing that bracelet you got her, and suddenly I'm the bad guy for trying to maintain some standards for our family." I took a deep breath. I didn't say anything to Mom except the truth about what happened Christmas morning. Your version of the truth. No, Melissa. The truth. You want to know what I told her? I told her exactly what you said, word for word. I told her about clinking your champagne glass and announcing that Rebecca and I didn't match your status. I told her about you telling us to get out of the photo. I told her what she said about me being just the in-law. Silence on the other end. I didn't make anything up or exaggerate anything. I just told her what happened, in your own words. You're trying to turn her against me. I'm not trying to turn anyone against anyone. But I'm also not going to let you rewrite history to make yourself look like the victim. This is ridiculous. It was just a photo, David. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? And there it was. The thing that had been bothering me for months, finally crystallized in her dismissive tone. Just a photo, I repeated. Right. It was just a photo when you wanted to exclude me from it. But somehow it became about family unity and togetherness when you were explaining to the internet why I wasn't in it. That's different. No, it's not different. You can't have it both ways, Melissa. You can't treat me like I don't matter and then act hurt when I stop pretending that your treatment of me is acceptable. The conversation went downhill from there, ending with her hanging up on me. But something interesting happened over the following weeks. Other family members started reaching out. Sarah called first. I keep thinking about Christmas morning, she said. About how we all just went along with what Melissa said. I didn't even question it at the time, but looking back, it was really messed up. Then Uncle Frank sent a text, your mom showed me some of Melissa's Facebook posts. That's not what happened and we all know it. Next family gathering, we do things differently. Even Aunt Linda, usually the most diplomatic person in our family, made a comment during a phone call with Rebecca, I've been thinking about those beautiful pajamas David bought for everyone. What a thoughtful gesture. It's a shame we didn't get to wear them. The funny thing is, I wasn't trying to turn anyone against Melissa. I wasn't campaigning for support or trying to build alliances. I was just living my life. Being honest when people ask me questions. Setting boundaries when boundaries needed to be set. But apparently, that was enough to make people start questioning the dynamics they'd accepted without examination for years. The real turning point came in August. Mom called to invite Rebecca and me to her birthday dinner, just immediate family, she said. I hesitated, wondering if this was going to be another situation where I'd be made to feel like an outsider in my own family. David, Mom said, sensing my reluctance, I want you there. Both of you. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can stay home. The dinner was at Mom's house, and when Rebecca and I arrived, I immediately noticed something different. The seating arrangement, for one thing. Instead of being relegated to the far end of the table like usual, Mom had set places for Rebecca and me right next to her. Melissa and her family were seated across from us, and for the first time in my memory, Melissa wasn't positioned as the clear center of attention. The evening started awkwardly. Melissa was polite but cool, Brad seemed confused by the shifted dynamics, and their kids kept looking around like they weren't sure how to behave without their usual elevated status in the family hierarchy. But then something interesting happened. Without Melissa orchestrating every conversation, other people started talking. Uncle Frank told stories about his new job. Sarah shared updates about her kids' school activities. Aunt Linda talked about the book club she'd joined. And I realized that for years, I'd thought family gatherings were just naturally focused on Melissa and her achievements because she was the successful one. But it wasn't natural at all. She'd been directing every conversation toward herself, steering every topic back to her life, her accomplishments, her opinions. When people weren't performing for her approval, they were actually interesting, funny, engaging people. About halfway through dinner, Mom stood up and tapped her glass. My stomach clenched, expecting another announcement that would somehow diminish me. Instead, she said, I want to thank my son David for reminding me what family actually means. Not status or appearances or who has the biggest house or the most expensive car. Just love and respect and showing up for each other. The silence that followed was different from the Christmas morning silence. This wasn't agreement with cruelty. This was people processing a fundamental shift in how they understood their family. Melissa's face went through several expressions: surprise, hurt, anger, calculation. Finally, she forced a smile and said, well, we all love each other here. Do we? Mom asked quietly. Because love without respect isn't really love, is it? It's just habit. The conversation that followed was unlike any family discussion we'd ever had. People started talking about things they'd never voiced before. Sarah admitted that she'd always felt pressure to compete with Melissa's lifestyle, even though she was perfectly happy with her more modest life. Uncle Frank said he'd stopped sharing good news about his job because Melissa always managed to make her career sound more impressive by comparison. Even Brad, who usually just went along with whatever Melissa wanted, spoke up. Sometimes I feel like we spend so much energy maintaining our image that we forget to actually enjoy our lives. Melissa tried several times to steer the conversation back to safer territory, but Mom wasn't having it. We need to be honest with ourselves, Mom said. We've gotten into some unhealthy patterns as a family. Some of us have been allowed to dominate conversations and decisions, while others have been made to feel like their contributions don't matter as much. She looked directly at me. David, you were right to leave Christmas morning. And you were right to take back your gifts. We treated you poorly, and you responded with more dignity than we deserved. I felt Rebecca squeeze my hand under the table. But more than that, Mom continued, you showed us something important. You showed us that love without respect is hollow. That generosity without appreciation is meaningless. That being family isn't an excuse for treating each other badly. Melissa finally exploded. Are you seriously going to sit there and make me the villain because I have standards? Because I've worked hard to build something meaningful with my life? No one's making you the villain, Melissa, I said quietly. But having standards and treating people with respect aren't mutually exclusive. You can maintain your standards without making other people feel worthless. I never made you feel worthless. The table went quiet. Everyone was looking at her, and I could see the moment she realized what she'd just revealed. If she'd never made me feel worthless, why was she so defensive about it? Christmas morning, I said gently, you told me I didn't match your status. You told me to get out of the family photo. You laughed when I was excluded. How did you think that would make me feel? She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once in her life, Melissa didn't have a ready answer. I was just trying to. She started, then trailed off. Trying to what? A long pause. Trying to make sure everything looked perfect. For who? Another pause. For everyone. For the photo. For the family image. But I am family. So what you're really saying is that you were trying to make sure everything looked perfect by excluding the family members who didn't meet your visual standards. She looked around the table, maybe hoping for support, but everyone was just watching. Waiting. I didn't mean it that way, she said finally. How did you mean it? And that's when something shifted in Melissa's face. The defensive anger melted away, and for a moment, she looked genuinely confused and hurt. I don't know, she whispered. I honestly don't know. The rest of the evening was quieter, more thoughtful. We didn't solve decades of family dysfunction in one dinner, but we acknowledged it. We talked about it. We agreed that things needed to change. Melissa apologized before she left, though it was awkward and incomplete. I'm sorry if I made you feel bad, David. That wasn't my intention. It wasn't the apology I might have wanted, but it was a start. Over the following months, our family gatherings gradually became more balanced. Melissa still dominated conversations sometimes, but other people started pushing back gently when she did. Mom made a conscious effort to ask about everyone's lives, not just defer to whoever was talking loudest. Most importantly, I stopped trying to earn my place at the table. I just showed up as myself, contributed what I wanted to contribute, and left when I was ready to leave. The custom pajamas finally made their debut at Rebecca's family Christmas gathering in December. Her family thought they were beautiful, and we all wore them for photos that actually captured joy instead of just expensive coordination. I sent one of those photos to Mom with a message. The pajamas found the right family after all. She wrote back, they look perfect on people who actually love each other. 6 months later, Melissa's marriage imploded. Turns out that Brad's promotion had come with some creative accounting that caught up with him. Their house went into foreclosure, the BMW got repossessed, and suddenly their elevated status wasn't quite so elevated anymore. I expected to feel vindicated, but mostly I just felt sad for them. Especially for their kids, who'd been taught that their worth was tied to material success. Mom called me when she heard the news. Melissa needs family right now, she said. I know. Are you going to be able to handle being around her without it being weird? I thought about it. Yeah, I think so. She's still my sister. Even after everything? Especially after everything. This is when family actually matters, right? Not when things are easy and everyone looks good in photos. When things are hard and someone needs support. The family gathering where Melissa told everyone about the divorce was painful to watch. She was so used to being the success story that she clearly didn't know how to be vulnerable. She kept trying to frame the bankruptcy as a temporary setback, the divorce as her choice, the loss of their house as an opportunity for a fresh start. But for the first time in years, nobody was buying her spin. Not because we wanted to see her fail, but because we'd learned to see through performance to the person underneath. Melissa, I said when she paused in her relentlessly positive narrative, this must be really scary. She looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. It is, she said quietly. It's terrifying. And that's when the real conversation started. Not about maintaining image or managing perception, but about fear and uncertainty and the challenge of rebuilding after everything falls apart. I offered to help her find a good bankruptcy attorney. Sarah offered to let Melissa and the kids stay with her temporarily. Uncle Frank offered to help Brad find a new job through his connections. For the first time in years, we actually felt like a family. Messy, complicated, imperfect, but real. The custom pajamas are still in our guest room closet, but now they represent something different to me. They're not a symbol of rejection or humiliation. They're a reminder of the moment I learned to value myself enough to walk away from people who didn't value me, and the unexpected journey that led to something better than what I'd lost. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is refuse to accept being treated badly by them. Not out of spite or revenge, but out of love. Love for yourself, and ultimately, love for them too. Because families that operate on hierarchy and status and exclusion aren't really families at all. They're just groups of people who happen to share DNA and holiday traditions. Real families are built on respect, inclusion, and the radical idea that everyone at the table deserves to be there. The pajamas taught me that. And despite everything, I'm grateful for the lesson. But here's the part I haven't told you yet. the part that still gives me chills when I think about it. Last month, Rebecca and I were cleaning out that guest room closet, finally ready to donate some old clothes we never wore. I pulled out one of the pajama boxes, Uncle Frank's, as it happened, and opened it just to check the condition before donating. Inside, underneath the tissue paper, I found something I'd never noticed before. A small card, cream-colored with gold edges, tucked beneath the pajama top. My heart stopped when I read it. It was from the custom embroidery company, and it said, "Thank you for choosing our services for your family tradition. We hope these bring you years of joy and togetherness. Remember, the best families aren't the ones that look perfect in photos, they're the ones where everyone feels loved and valued exactly as they are." I sat there on the closet floor, holding this card that felt like a message, and started laughing. Not bitter laughter, but the kind of deep, cleansing laughter that comes when you realize the cosmic joke has been on you all along. The company that made the pajamas, strangers who knew nothing about our family drama, had understood something about family that we'd completely missed. Something I'd known instinctively but had forgotten in my desperation to belong. I showed the card to Rebecca, and she got that look on her face that she gets when she's trying not to cry. "David," she said, "I think you should show this to your mom." So I did. I drove over to Mom's house that afternoon and handed her the card without explanation. She read it twice, then looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "How long have you had this?" "I just found it today. But I think maybe I needed to find it now, when I could actually understand what it means." She nodded slowly. "The best families aren't the ones that look perfect in photos. They're the ones where everyone feels loved and valued exactly as they are," I finished. We sat in her kitchen for a long time after that, not saying much, just processing the weight of those words. Finally, Mom spoke up. "I want to do Christmas differently this year." "What do you mean?" "I mean no photographer. No coordinated outfits. No agenda except being together." "And David?" She reached across the table and took my hand. "I want everyone to wear those pajamas. All of us. The way it should have been from the beginning." I squeezed her hand. "Are you sure? What about Melissa?" "Melissa will adapt. And if she doesn't, that's her choice to make." This Christmas is still 2 months away, but already I can feel something different in the air during family conversations. People seem more relaxed, more genuine. Even Melissa, who's slowly rebuilding her life in a much more humble setting, has started contributing to group texts without trying to one-up everyone else's news. Rebecca jokes that those pajamas might be magic, considering how much they've changed our family dynamics. Maybe she's right. Or maybe they just forced us to confront truths we'd been avoiding for years. Either way, I'm keeping that little card from the embroidery company. It's sitting on my desk now, a daily reminder that the best families aren't about status or appearances or matching anyone's level. They're about love, respect, and the revolutionary idea that everyone deserves to feel valued exactly as they are. The pajamas are coming out of the closet this Christmas. All of them. For the family photo they were always meant to be part of. And you know what? I think that's exactly how it was supposed to be. Story 3. My niece cornered me at Thanksgiving and demanded I pay for her $250,000 dream wedding because I'm rich and single with no kids. "What else would you do with all that money?" When I politely declined, she screamed that I was dead to her and uninvited me, snarling, "We never wanted your negative energy there anyway." My sister grabbed my arm and added, "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay family?" I just nodded and left without another word. That was 3 months ago. Yesterday, 1 hour before the wedding, her fiancé called off the entire wedding, and she was begging me to save it. Okay, so I need to tell you this story because I'm still shaking from what went down, and I honestly don't know if I handled it right. 3 months ago, I thought I understood my family. Yesterday proved I was living in some kind of delusional fantasy land. Let me paint you the scene from Thanksgiving, because that's where this nightmare started. Picture this: I'm sitting at my sister Carol's dining room table, minding my own business, cutting into what was actually decent turkey for once. The whole family's there: Carol, her husband Mike Sr., their daughter Emma who's 24 and about to get married, and Emma's fiancé Mike Jr. We'll call him Little Mike to avoid confusion, though he's actually taller than his future father-in-law. Everything seemed normal. Too normal, actually. Should have been my first warning sign. Emma had been unusually quiet all evening, which for her is like a tornado going silent right before it levels your house. This is a woman who once spent 45 minutes explaining to a Starbucks barista exactly how her foam should be distributed. Silence from Emma meant something was brewing. I'm reaching for the cranberry sauce, thinking maybe we'll actually get through one family gathering without drama, when Emma suddenly stands up like she's about to deliver the Gettysburg Address. "Uncle David," she says in this sickeningly sweet voice, "I need to discuss something really important with you." The entire table goes dead quiet. Even Mike Sr. stops chewing his dinner roll, and that man has never met a carb he couldn't demolish in under 30 seconds. "Sure, honey. What's on your mind?" What came out of her mouth next still makes my blood pressure spike just thinking about it. She launched into this clearly rehearsed presentation about her dream wedding. And when I say dream, I mean the kind of dream that requires a small nation's GDP to fund. $250,000. For one day. One single day of her life. The venue alone was 85 grand, some restored Victorian mansion on a lake that apparently once hosted European royalty or something equally ridiculous. The flowers had to be imported from Holland because local flowers weren't sophisticated enough for her vision. The photographer was this celebrity guy who'd shot weddings for actual princesses. The dress cost more than my first car. She had spreadsheets, people. Color-coded spreadsheets with budget breakdowns and vendor comparisons. She'd clearly put more effort into this presentation than she'd put into her college thesis. I listened politely, nodding along, waiting for the actual ask. Maybe she wanted my professional advice. I do run an event planning business, after all. Maybe she needed help negotiating with vendors or coordinating logistics. Then she got to the point, and my whole world tilted sideways. So here's what little Mike and I have been thinking, she said, gesturing toward her fiancé, who suddenly looked like he wanted to crawl under the Persian rug and hide there until spring. It would be absolutely perfect if you could sponsor the whole thing. I blinked. Sponsor? Fund it. Pay for it. All of it. She smiled this bright, expectant smile like she'd just asked me to pass the salt. I mean, think about it, Uncle David. You're single, you don't have kids, your business is doing really well. What else are you going to spend all that money on? Some boring investment portfolio that just sits there doing nothing? The silence that followed was so complete I could hear Mrs. Henderson's dog barking 4 houses down. Carol was suddenly fascinated by her mashed potatoes. Mike Sr. was staring at his plate like it contained the meaning of life. Emma, I said carefully, keeping my voice level, that's very generous of you to offer me that opportunity, but I can't? Can't what? Her voice jumped up about 3 octaves. Can't help family when we need you? It's not about helping. Then what is it about? Being selfish? The mask was starting to slip now. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the storm building behind her eyes. I've been planning this wedding for 18 months, Uncle David. 18 months of stress and coordination and dealing with impossible vendors and trying to make everything perfect while working a full-time job. Little Mike was shifting in his chair like he was sitting on hot coals. I caught his eye for a second, and he looked mortified? Terrified? It was hard to tell. Emma, I understand wedding planning is stressful, but $250,000 is pocket change to you. She slammed her hand on the table so hard the wine glasses jumped and Carol's good china rattled. Pocket change. You live in that huge house all by yourself, you drive a Tesla, you take those fancy European vacations twice a year. Don't you dare sit there and act like you can't afford it. Here's the thing about having money, and yes, I do well for myself, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. My consulting business took off about 5 years ago, and I've been smart about investments. But having money doesn't mean you're obligated to fund everyone else's fantasies, especially when those fantasies cost more than most people make in 5 years. The amount isn't the issue, Emma? Then what is the issue? Carol finally spoke up, but she wasn't looking at Emma. She was looking at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Cold. Calculating. Like she was seeing me for the first time and not particularly liking what she found. What exactly is the problem, David? Something in her tone made my chest tighten. This wasn't my sister asking an innocent question. This felt like an ambush, and I'd walked right into it wearing a target on my back. The problem is that it's not my responsibility to fund someone else's wedding, no matter how much it costs. Wrong answer. Emma's face went from red to purple. Someone else's wedding? Someone else's? She was screaming now, loud enough that I worried about the neighbors calling the police. I'm your niece. Your family. This isn't some stranger asking for a handout, this is your own blood asking for help with the most important day of her life. It's one day, Emma. One very expensive day. One day? She was standing now, leaning over the table toward me. One day? This is my wedding day. This is supposed to be perfect. This is supposed to be magical and beautiful and everything I've dreamed about since I was a little girl, and you want to ruin it because you're too cheap and selfish to help your own family. I sat there taking it. What else could I do? Yell back at a 24-year-old having a complete meltdown? Storm out and prove whatever point she was trying to make about me being difficult? You know what? She was pacing now, gesticulating wildly. You're pathetic. You're a sad, lonely man who hoards money because you don't have anything else in your life worth caring about. No wife, no kids, no real relationships. Just your precious bank account and your empty house and your meaningless business trips. Each word hit like a physical blow. Because here's the thing, some of it was true. I am single. I don't have kids. My house is pretty quiet most evenings. But I'd never thought of my life as pathetic or empty. I'd thought of it as uncomplicated. Peaceful. And you know what else? She was building to her grand finale now. You're dead to me. Dead. Do you hear that? We don't want you at the wedding anyway. We never wanted your negative energy there. You'd probably just sit in the corner judging everyone and sucking all the joy out of the room like some bitter old man. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt something inside my chest crack, not break, exactly, but develop a hairline fracture that I knew would never quite heal properly. Then Carol grabbed my arm. Hard. Her fingernails dug into my skin through my shirt sleeve. After everything we've done for you, she hissed, her voice low and vicious, this is how you repay family? This is how you show gratitude? That hit harder than anything Emma had screamed. Everything we've done for you. Like I was some charity case they'd been graciously supporting out of the goodness of their hearts. Like I hadn't been the one helping them for years. Like I hadn't gotten Mike Sr. his current job through my business connections when he was unemployed for 8 months. Like I hadn't paid for Emma's car repairs twice in the past year when she was a little short on funds. Like I hadn't been there for Carol when Mike Sr. was deployed overseas, bringing groceries and helping with Emma when she was still in high school and basically raising herself because Carol was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Like I hadn't spent the last 27 years being Uncle David, the guy who never missed a birthday party or school play or soccer game, who remembered everyone's favorite everything and always brought the best presents and was always available when anyone needed anything. I looked around the table. Little Mike wouldn't meet my eyes. Mike Sr. was studying his dinner like it was a work of art. Emma was still glaring at me with pure hatred. Carol was waiting for my response with this self-righteous expression that made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. Okay, I said quietly. That was it. Just okay. I stood up, grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair, and headed for the door. No dramatic speeches. No final devastating comebacks. No door slamming or tire screeching. I just left. The drive home was surreal. 27 years of family dinners, Christmas mornings, graduation parties, hospital visits, late-night phone calls when someone needed advice or help or just someone to listen. 27 years of being part of something bigger than myself. Gone. Over a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. I spent the rest of that weekend in a weird haze, going through the motions of my normal routine while my brain tried to process what had happened. By Monday, I'd almost convinced myself it was all some kind of stress-induced nightmare. Then I checked my phone and found 17 missed calls from Emma and 12 from Carol. The voicemails were intense. Emma alternating between furious rants about my selfishness and tearful apologies. Carol insisting this was all a misunderstanding and couldn't we please just talk like adults. I didn't call back. The weeks that followed were strange. Radio silence from my sister's family, which was actually kind of peaceful once I got used to it. I threw myself into work, took on some new clients, started planning a trip to Japan I'd been putting off for years. Life went on. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. Every time I passed the coffee shop where Emma worked part-time during college, every time I saw a Toyota Camry like the one I'd helped her buy, every time little Mike's favorite football team won a game and I automatically reached for my phone to text him about it, little paper cuts of loss that added up to something bigger. I told myself it was better this way. Cleaner. If that's how they really saw me, as a walking ATM instead of family, then maybe it was good to know where I stood. Then the holidays came and went without so much as a Christmas card. My birthday in January passed unacknowledged. I started to accept that this was just how things were now. Then yesterday happened, and everything I thought I'd figured out got turned upside down again. I was at home, working on a client presentation in my office, when my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer it anyway. Maybe curiosity. Maybe hope. Maybe just habit. Uncle David? Emma's voice was so small and broken I almost didn't recognize it. Please don't hang up. Please. My finger hovered over the end call button for what felt like an hour but was probably only a few seconds. What do you want, Emma? Her voice cracked like she was 15 again. I need help. Please. I'm begging you. With what? The wedding's today. Right now. Well, it was supposed to be right now. Little Mike called it off. I sat back in my chair, trying to process that information. After all the drama, all the planning, all the expense, it was over? He called it off? When? An hour ago. Maybe less. I don't know, time feels weird right now. She was crying, ugly sobs that made something twist painfully in my chest despite everything. He said he couldn't marry someone who treated family the way I treated you. He said if I could be that cruel to someone who loved me, what would I do to him when things got difficult? Smart man, little Mike. Took him a while to put the pieces together, but he got there eventually. Emma, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I don't understand what you want from me. Everyone's here. Her voice was getting more desperate with each word. All the guests, both families, people who traveled from other states. The venue is decorated, the food is ready, the band is setting up. Everything is perfect except the groom is gone and I'm sitting here in my wedding dress with nowhere to go and no idea how to face everyone. So call it off. Make an announcement, apologize to the guests, and I can't. The desperation in her voice was raw, real in a way that cut right through all my carefully constructed emotional walls. I can't face them. I can't tell 300 people that my fiancé left me because I'm a terrible person. Mom spent her entire retirement savings on this dress. Grandma Ruth flew in from Phoenix and she's 92 and this might be the last family event she ever gets to attend. Cousin Jennifer came all the way from Seattle with her new baby. Emma, please, Uncle David. Please just come. I know I messed up, I know I said horrible things, but I need someone in my corner right now and you're the only person who. Another sob cut her off. I stared out my office window at the gray February sky, watching a cardinal land on the bare oak tree in my backyard. 3 months ago, I would have dropped everything and driven straight to that wedding. 3 months ago, Emma could have called me from jail in another country and I would have figured out how to get her home. But 3 months ago was before I learned that family apparently came with price tags attached. Where's your mother? I asked. She's here. Somewhere. She won't talk to me. She's so embarrassed she can barely look at anyone. She keeps hiding in the bathroom crying and everyone's asking her questions and she doesn't know what to say. Emma's voice broke again. Dad's trying to deal with the vendors, but they're all asking about payment and cancellation fees and nobody knows what to do about anything. Emma, take a deep breath. Where are you right now? In the bridal suite at the Grandview Manor. That's the venue. I'm in my dress and my makeup looks like a disaster movie and everyone's waiting for me to appear and I can't do it. I can't face them alone. The Grandview Manor. I knew it well, had actually recommended it to several clients over the years. Beautiful venue, right on the lake, with gardens that were spectacular in spring and summer. Also expensive as all get out, with cancellation policies that would make a loan shark blush. How much money will your family lose if everything gets cancelled right now? Silence for a long moment. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, around $60,000. Maybe more. The caterer still has to be paid because the food's already prepared. The band was contracted for the full day. The flowers can't be returned because they're already arranged and delivered. The photographer showed up and started shooting prep photos before anyone told him what happened. $60,000. More than most people make in a year, gone because my niece decided to treat her uncle like an ATM and her fiancé like an accessory instead of a partner. But here's the thing that was eating at me, it wasn't really about Emma anymore, was it? It was about my 92-year-old grandmother sitting in that venue in her best dress, confused about why there was no ceremony. It was about Carol, for all her faults, facing the most humiliating day of her life in front of everyone she'd ever bragged to about her daughter's perfect wedding. It was about 300 people who'd cleared their schedules, bought gifts, arranged childcare, and traveled long distances to celebrate what they thought was going to be a happy occasion. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I heard myself saying. Really? The relief in Emma's voice was so overwhelming it was almost tangible through the phone. Really? You'll actually come? I'm coming. But Emma, we're going to have a very serious conversation when this is over. Yes, anything, whatever you want. Thank you, Uncle David. Thank you so much. I love you. I'm so sorry. Save it for later, I said, but not unkindly. I'll see you soon. I hung up and sat there for a moment, trying to figure out exactly what I was walking into and whether I was making a huge mistake. Then I grabbed my keys, put on a decent suit, and headed out into the disaster. The Grandview Manor was chaos when I arrived. The parking lot was full of confused-looking people in formal wear, some clearly preparing to leave, others standing around in small groups trying to figure out what was happening. Through the tall windows of the main building, I could see the wedding party, bridesmaids in dusty rose dresses clustered together looking lost, groomsmen in their rented tuxedos standing around awkwardly like they were waiting for someone to tell them what to do with their hands. I found Carol first. She was in the venue manager's office, and I could hear her voice from halfway down the hall, not shouting, but that particular tone of controlled desperation that meant she was about 30 seconds away from a complete breakdown. Understand this is a difficult situation, a woman in a severe black suit was saying as I appeared in the doorway, but our contracts are very clear about cancellation policies, and frankly, with less than 2 hours notice. Carol, I said. She spun around, and I barely recognized my sister. Carol, who never left the house without perfect makeup and coordinated accessories, looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Her foundation was streaked with tears, her carefully styled hair was falling out of its elegant updo, and she was clutching a handful of tissues like they were the only thing keeping her upright. David. Her voice was flat, empty of everything except exhaustion. Emma called you. She did. I can't, she gestured helplessly at the venue manager. They want money we don't have. The photographer's asking if he should leave. The band wants to know if they should pack up their equipment. The caterer is demanding payment regardless of whether we serve the food. The guests are asking questions I don't have answers for, and Her voice cracked completely, and she started crying again, not the delicate tears of a woman trying to preserve her makeup, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone whose world was falling apart in real time. "It's okay," I said, and somehow, looking at my sister completely falling apart, it actually was okay. The anger from Thanksgiving was still there, but it was buried under something bigger now. Something that felt like love, even if it was complicated, messy love. "We'll figure something out." The venue manager, her nameplate said Patricia Wells, event coordinator, looked between us with obvious relief. "Are you family, Mr. Martinez?" "David Martinez. I'm the bride's uncle." "Ah." Her expression shifted from bureaucratic irritation to cautious professionalism. "Well, Mr. Martinez, perhaps we could discuss some alternative arrangements." What followed was 45 minutes of intense negotiation, phone calls, and creative problem solving. Patricia turned out to be much more helpful once she realized someone with actual authority and resources had shown up. The ceremony space could be converted to a casual reception area. The elaborate plated dinner could become a cocktail-style reception with the same food served buffet style. The band could play, but for a shorter set focused on background music rather than dancing. The photographer could document the celebration of family instead of a wedding. It wouldn't be the fairy tale event Emma had planned, but it would be something. A party. A gathering. A way to salvage some joy and dignity from the wreckage. The hardest part was going to be explaining it to Emma. I found her in the bridal suite, still in her wedding dress, staring out the window at the lake. The room was gorgeous, all cream silk and fresh flowers and soft lighting designed to make every bride feel like a princess. Emma looked like a ghost haunting her own fairy tale. "Hey," I said softly, closing the door behind me. She turned around, and for just a moment she looked exactly like the 7-year-old who used to follow me around family gatherings, asking endless questions about everything and nothing, convinced I had all the answers to life's mysteries. "Is it really over?" she asked. I pulled up one of the delicate chairs and sat down across from her. "The wedding? Yes, that's over. But that doesn't mean today has to be a complete disaster." I explained the plan we'd worked out. The modified reception, the casual celebration, the chance to turn what could have been a humiliating catastrophe into something resembling a family party. She listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or asking quiet questions about logistics. "Why?" she asked when I finished. "After everything I said to you, after how I treated you, why would you come here and fix this for us?" It was a fair question. I'd been asking myself the same thing since I'd gotten in my car. "Because," I said finally, "this is what family does. Even when we mess up badly. Even when we say things we can't take back. Even when we disappoint each other in ways that change everything." I meant every word I said at Thanksgiving. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "When I called you pathetic and selfish and said you were dead to me, I was furious, and I wanted to hurt you as much as possible. I know. And little Mike was right about what that says about me as a person." She looked down at her hands, which were twisted in the expensive white silk of her dress. "I've been thinking about it every single day since then. About what kind of person treats someone who's been nothing but good to them like they owe you something just because they have money." "Emma. No, please let me finish." She looked up at me, and her eyes were clearer now, more honest than I'd seen them in years. "I've been spoiled my whole life. I know that. And somewhere along the way, I started thinking that wanting something meant I deserved it automatically. That other people existed to make my dreams come true. That's not how the world works, and it's definitely not how love works." I reached over and took her hand. "Everyone makes mistakes, honey. Not like this. Not mistakes that hurt people this badly." She squeezed my fingers. "I'm going to pay you back. For today, for whatever this costs to fix. It might take me years, but I'm going to do it." "Emma, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. I absolutely do need to. Because that's what responsible adults do when they mess up this badly. They fix it, whatever it takes." She stood up, smoothing down her dress with shaking hands. "And I want to be a responsible adult. I want to be someone little Mike could have been proud to marry, even if it's too late for that now." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. We had to explain the situation to 300 confused guests without making it sound like a complete disaster. Carol and I worked with the caterers to rearrange the food service. Patricia coordinated with the band to create a playlist that would work for a family celebration instead of wedding reception dancing. The photographer, a surprisingly understanding guy named Marcus, suggested we frame it as a celebration of family and love and focus on candid shots of people enjoying each other's company instead of traditional wedding poses. The florist managed to quickly rearrange some of the elaborate wedding displays into more casual centerpieces. It wasn't the fairy tale day Emma had planned and obsessed over for 18 months. But it was something better, in its own way. It was real. It was honest. It was a family coming together to support each other when everything had gone sideways. Grandma Ruth, who turned out to be sharp as ever despite her age, pulled me aside around the middle of the reception. "That girl of yours learned a hard lesson today," she said, nodding toward Emma, who was circulating among the guests, thanking people for coming and apologizing for the confusion. "She's not really mine, Grandma. She's Carol's daughter. Don't be dense, David. She's been yours since she was old enough to follow you around asking why the sky is blue and where babies come from." She patted my arm with her tiny, surprisingly strong hand. "Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who can hurt us worst. But they're also the ones most worth forgiving." Carol and I didn't talk much during the reception. We were both too busy managing logistics and making sure guests felt comfortable despite the unusual circumstances. But at one point, she found me by the bar and grabbed my arm. Gently this time, not like she was trying to leave marks. "Thank you," she said simply. "I know we don't deserve it, but thank you for saving us from complete humiliation." "You're my sister," I said. "Your family. Are we? Still? Even after?" She trailed off, but we both knew what she meant. "Yeah, Carol. We're still family. Even after." She nodded and walked away, but I saw her wiping her eyes with a cocktail napkin. The reception wound down around 7 o'clock. Guests began trickling out, most of them seeming to have genuinely enjoyed the unexpected party. Several people told me it was the most interesting family event they'd been to in years. A few even said they preferred it to traditional weddings because it felt more relaxed and authentic. The vendors packed up their equipment with minimal drama. Turns out having someone available to write checks immediately solved most of their concerns about the non-traditional arrangement. The venue staff began their cleanup process, and Patricia mentioned that we'd actually created less mess than most wedding receptions because there hadn't been any dancing or late-night party activities. Emma found me in the parking lot as I was getting ready to leave. She was still in her wedding dress, but she'd kicked off her heels and was carrying them in one hand, her carefully styled hair falling loose around her shoulders. "Uncle David?" She looked exhausted but somehow more like herself than she had in months. "Can I ask you something, and will you give me an honest answer?" "Always." "Do you think little Mike was right to call off the wedding?" I considered the question seriously, because she deserved a serious answer. I think Mike made the decision that felt right for him. And I think he was smart enough to recognize something important about character and how we treat the people we love when we think no one's watching. She nodded slowly. "I think he was right too. I mean, I'm heartbroken and humiliated and I feel like my whole life just exploded. But I think he was right. I need to figure out how to be better before I'm ready to be someone's wife." That's a very mature way to look at it. I'm trying to learn maturity. Apparently I'm a little behind schedule on that. She smiled, and it was sad but genuine. "Will you still be my uncle? Even after everything? Even knowing what kind of person I can be when I don't get what I want? Emma, you could rob a bank and set my house on fire and I'd still be your uncle. That's not how family works. You don't stop being family just because you mess up." She hugged me then, fierce and desperate and grateful all at once. "I love you, Uncle David. I'm sorry I forgot that for a while and acted like you owed me something instead." "I love you too, kiddo. And I never forgot that, not even when I was angry." So here I am, about 14 hours later, still trying to process everything that happened. My niece's dream wedding imploded spectacularly, my family relationships went through a blender, and I spent my Saturday afternoon playing crisis manager for a party I wasn't originally invited to. And somehow, despite everything, I think we're all going to be okay. Maybe better than okay. Emma texted me this morning to say she'd called little Mike to apologize, not to try to win him back, but because she needed him to know that she understood where she'd gone wrong and why he'd made the right choice. According to her, he was gracious about it. Said he didn't regret their relationship, just wished things could have ended differently, and that he hoped she found what she was looking for. Carol called an hour ago to thank me again and to ask if I wanted to come to dinner next Sunday. "Nothing fancy," she said. "No special occasions or big announcements. Just family dinner. Just us." "I'd like that," I told her, and I meant it completely. Little Mike, it turns out, is doing fine. Emma mentioned that he'd already moved out of their shared apartment and was staying with friends while he figured out his next steps. Apparently he'd been having doubts for weeks but hadn't known how to express them without seeming like he was backing out of their commitment. Emma's behavior at Thanksgiving had just crystallized what he was already feeling. The wedding dress is still hanging in Emma's closet, she told me. She's not sure what to do with it yet, maybe donate it, maybe save it for someday, maybe have it altered into something else entirely. But she's not throwing it away, which somehow seems important. Neither am I throwing anything away. Not the relationship, not the love, not the hope that we can all do better next time. Here's what I learned from this whole mess: family is the most complicated thing in the world. Money makes it even more complicated. People you love can disappoint you in ways that change how you see them forever. But at the end of the day, love is stronger than pride, forgiveness is stronger than anger, and showing up for people matters more than being right about anything. Emma still has a lot of growing up to do, and some of those lessons are going to be harder than others. Carol and I still have work to do on rebuilding trust and figuring out how to be siblings instead of whatever weird dynamic we fell into. Little Mike is probably better off finding someone who already knows how to treat people with basic human decency. But we're family. That means we keep trying, keep forgiving, keep showing up for each other even when everything falls apart. Especially when everything falls apart. After all, that's what family does. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's more to this story that I haven't told you yet, and it's the part that really shows you just how deep this family dysfunction went. About a week after the wedding disaster, I was finally starting to feel like maybe we could all move forward. Emma had been texting me regularly, not asking for anything, just checking in, sharing random thoughts about her day, slowly rebuilding the connection we'd had before everything went sideways. Carol had called a few times to chat about normal sister stuff. It felt like we were finding our way back to something resembling a healthy family dynamic. Then I got a call that changed everything again. It was from little Mike. Which was weird because we'd never really had a relationship outside of family gatherings. He was Emma's fiancé, then ex-fiancé, and that was pretty much the extent of our connection. Mr. Martinez? His voice sounded strained, nervous. This is Mike. Mike Johnson. Emma's ex-fiancé. Mike, hi. How are you holding up? That's actually why I'm calling. I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure Emma is going to handle it well when she finds out. My stomach dropped. What kind of something? Can we meet for coffee? This isn't really a phone conversation. We met at a little cafe downtown, one of those places with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls that tries really hard to be quirky. Mike showed up looking like he hadn't slept in days, rumpled clothes, stubble, the kind of exhausted that goes bone deep. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I wasn't sure you'd want to get involved in more family drama. What's going on, Mike? He stared into his coffee cup for a long moment, like he was trying to find the right words floating in the foam. The thing is, I didn't call off the wedding just because of how Emma treated you at Thanksgiving. Okay. I mean, that was part of it. That was definitely part of it. But there was other stuff too. Stuff I probably should have paid attention to a long time ago. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through some photos, then turned the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of Emma's Instagram story from about 2 weeks before the wedding. A picture of her engagement ring next to what looked like a significantly larger diamond ring. She posted this with the caption "Upgrade time. When your man finally realizes you deserve the best," Mike said. Except I never bought her a new ring. I couldn't afford a new ring. I was already stretched thin trying to pay for my half of the wedding expenses. I looked at the photo more closely. The new ring was definitely bigger, definitely more expensive looking. So where did it come from? That's what I wanted to know. When I asked her about it, she got defensive and said it was just a loan from a friend, someone who worked in jewelry who was letting her borrow it for photos. But she kept wearing it, and when I pressed her about it, she finally admitted the truth. Mike pulled up another photo on his phone. This one was a text conversation between Emma and someone named Ryan K. Ryan Kellerman, Mike explained. This guy she used to date in college. Apparently he's some kind of investment banker now, making serious money. Emma had been talking to him on and off for months, and when she found out he was going to be in town for a business conference right before our wedding. I read the text conversation, and my heart sank. Emma asking Ryan to meet for drinks to catch up. Ryan suggesting dinner instead. Emma saying she was having some doubts about getting married so young. Ryan offering to help her figure things out. There's more, Mike said, scrolling further. She told him about the ring situation, about how she'd always dreamed of having a bigger stone. So he bought her one. Just like that. Went to the same jewelry store where I'd bought her original ring and upgraded it, no questions asked. Mike, I'm so sorry. The thing is, I don't think she was planning to leave me for him. At least not initially. I think she just liked having options. Liked having someone who could give her things I couldn't afford. He put his phone away and looked directly at me. But it made me realize that I didn't really know who I was marrying. The Emma I fell in love with wasn't someone who would accept expensive gifts from other men while planning our wedding. We sat in silence for a moment while I processed this information. It explained so much about Mike's decision to call off the wedding, but it also painted Emma in an even worse light than I'd imagined. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Emma's been telling everyone that I called off the wedding because I got cold feet. That I panicked about commitment and abandoned her. She's not mentioning the Ryan situation at all. And I thought you should know the whole story, especially since you went out of your way to help salvage that reception. Have you told Carol about this? No. I probably should, but honestly, I just want to move on with my life. I don't want to get dragged into more family drama or have to defend my decision to anyone else. I understood that completely. But it also left me in an impossible position. I now knew something about Emma that cast her recent apologies and apparent growth in a completely different light. "There's one more thing," Mike said. The night before the wedding, when Emma was freaking out about everything falling apart, she called Ryan. Asked him to come to the reception and be her date. Told him she was finally ready to explore what we could be together. What did he say? He said no. Apparently even he thought it was inappropriate to show up to someone's cancelled wedding as a last-minute replacement groom. Mike laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's when she called you. The pieces were clicking into place now, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. Emma hadn't called me because she'd had some grand realization about family and love and forgiveness. She'd called me because her backup plan had fallen through and she was desperate. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad about helping her," Mike continued. "What you did was still the right thing to do. But I thought you deserved to know that her gratitude might not be as genuine as it seems." I drove home in a fog, trying to figure out what to do with this information. On one hand, it didn't really change anything. I'd helped my family in a crisis, and I didn't regret that. On the other hand, it meant that Emma's apparent growth and self-reflection might have been just another performance. I decided not to confront her about it immediately. Instead, I paid attention. I watched how she interacted with the family over the next few weeks, listened to what she said and how she said it. The signs were subtle, but they were there. She mentioned Ryan casually in conversation a few times. "Oh, this friend from college is in town for work, testing the waters to see if anyone would ask questions." She posted photos on social media that seemed designed to make her look like a heartbroken but resilient woman moving on from betrayal, rather than someone who'd been caught planning to cheat on her fiancé. Most telling of all, she started hinting about needing money again. Nothing as blatant as the wedding demand, but little comments about how expensive rent was going to be now that she was living alone, how she was worried about making car payments, how she might need to find a second job. I let it go for about 2 weeks. Then she crossed a line. I was at Carol's house for the Sunday dinner we'd planned, actually enjoying a relatively peaceful family meal, when Emma brought up the topic of loans between family members. "I was reading this article about how family financial support is really common in other cultures," she said, cutting her chicken with deliberate precision. "Like, in some places, it's totally normal for successful family members to help younger relatives get established in life." "That's interesting," Carol said neutrally. "I mean, it makes sense, right? When someone has the resources to help and someone else has a genuine need, and your family." She looked directly at me. "It's kind of like an investment in the family's future." I put down my fork. "Emma, what are you asking for?" "I'm not asking for anything specific. I'm just saying that if I were in a position to help family, I would want to do that. I would want to be generous." "But you're not in a position to help anyone right now." "Well, no. But if I was..." "You're not, though. You're in a position where you're thinking about asking for help." The table went quiet. Carol was looking back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. "I'm just saying that some families support each other financially and it works out really well for everyone," Emma said, her voice getting slightly defensive. "And I'm just saying that some families have healthy boundaries about money and that works out well too." "Uncle David, I don't understand why you're being so hostile about this." "I'm not being hostile. I'm being clear. Which is something I probably should have been months ago." I took a deep breath and made a decision that I'd been avoiding for weeks. "Emma, I know about Ryan." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. "What?" "I know about the ring. I know about the text messages. I know that you called him the night before your wedding and asked him to be your date to the reception." Carol's fork clattered to her plate. "What is he talking about, Emma?" Emma opened and closed her mouth a few times, looking like a fish gasping for air. That's not. Mike told you that?" "Mike told me the truth. Which is apparently something you've been having trouble with lately." "It wasn't what it looked like," Emma said quickly. "Ryan and I are just friends. The ring thing was just for photos, and the text messages were taken out of context." "Emma, stop." My voice came out harder than I'd intended. "Just stop lying. Please. For once in this entire mess, just tell the truth." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I actually knew and how she could spin it in her favor. "You want the truth?" Her voice was getting sharper now, more like the Emma from Thanksgiving. "Fine. Yes, I was talking to Ryan. Yes, he bought me a ring. Yes, I was thinking about what it would be like to be with someone who could actually afford to give me the life I want." Carol gasped. "Emma, you were engaged." "To someone who couldn't even afford a decent engagement ring," Emma snapped. "Do you know how embarrassing it was to show people that tiny little chip of a diamond and pretend I was happy with it? Do you know what it felt like to plan a wedding knowing that this was probably going to be the nicest thing that ever happened to me because my fiancé was never going to make enough money to give me anything better?" The ugly truth was finally coming out, and it was worse than I'd imagined. "So you decided to line up a replacement," I said. "I decided to keep my options open." Which turned out to be smart, since Mike was apparently looking for any excuse to bail anyway. He wasn't looking for an excuse, Emma. He found out that the woman he loved was shopping for someone with a bigger bank account. And what's wrong with wanting financial security? What's wrong with wanting nice things? You act like I'm some terrible person for not wanting to struggle financially for the rest of my life. There's nothing wrong with wanting financial security, I said. There's everything wrong with lying and cheating and manipulating people to get it. I never cheated. You accepted expensive gifts from another man while you were engaged. You made plans to leave your fiancé at the altar for someone who could afford to give you a bigger ring. What would you call that? Emma's face was bright red now, and she was breathing hard. I would call it being realistic about what I need to be happy. And what you need to be happy is someone else's money. Yes, she shouted. Yes, okay. I want nice things. I want to travel and live in a beautiful house and not worry about every single expense. I want someone who can afford to make me happy, and I'm tired of pretending that's shallow or wrong. The silence that followed was deafening. Carol was staring at her daughter like she'd never seen her before. Emma, Carol said quietly, that's not how love works. Love doesn't pay for anything, Mom. Love doesn't buy houses or cars or vacations or anything else that makes life worth living. So what was your plan? I asked. String Mike along until you could secure something better with Ryan? Or were you planning to leave Mike at the altar regardless? I don't know, okay? I don't know what I was planning. I was confused and scared and I felt trapped. Emma was crying now, but they seemed like angry tears rather than sad ones. And then Mike made the decision for me, so it doesn't matter anyway. It matters because you're sitting here trying to manipulate me into giving you money the same way you manipulated Ryan into buying you jewelry. I'm not manipulating anyone. Emma, you've brought up money in some form at every single conversation we've had since the wedding. You've hinted about needing financial help, talked about how generous families support each other, and now you're sitting here lecturing me about how some cultures normalize financial dependency. If that's not manipulation, what is it? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to decide whether to keep fighting or switch tactics. She chose to switch tactics. You're right, she said, her voice suddenly small and defeated. You're absolutely right. I've been thinking about asking you for money. Because I'm scared, Uncle David. I'm 24 years old and I just lost my fiancé and I have no idea how I'm going to support myself and everyone else seems to have their life figured out except me. So ask for help finding a job. Ask for help learning how to budget. Ask for help figuring out what you want to do with your life. Don't ask me to subsidize a lifestyle you haven't earned. But you could help me so easily, she said, and the desperation was creeping back into her voice. It wouldn't even make a dent in your savings. You could help me get an apartment in a nice area, or pay off my student loans, or, Emma, stop. Or help me go back to school so I could get a better job, or, stop. Or even just help me through the next few months while I figure things out, stop. I stood up from the table, and both Carol and Emma jumped. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're not asking for help. You're asking me to solve your problems with my money so you don't have to solve them yourself. What's wrong with that if you can afford it? And there it was. The fundamental disconnect that had been driving every conversation we'd had for months. What's wrong with it is that it turns me into your personal bank instead of your uncle. What's wrong with it is that it means you're never going to learn how to take care of yourself. What's wrong with it is that every time you look at me, you're going to see dollar signs instead of family. That's not true. Emma, when was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my life, my work, my interests, anything that didn't relate to what I could do for you? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. I can't remember either, I said. Because for the past year, every conversation we've had has somehow circled back to money. Your car repairs, your credit card debt, your student loans, your wedding, and now your post-breakup financial concerns. When did I stop being Uncle David and become the family ATM? I didn't mean for it to be like that. But it is like that. And until you can figure out how to have a relationship with me that isn't based on what I can afford to give you, we don't really have a relationship at all. I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair and headed for the door. Carol followed me. David, wait. What, Carol? Are you going to tell me I'm being too hard on her? That I should just give her what she wants because she's family? No, she said quietly. I'm going to apologize. For Thanksgiving, for not seeing what was happening, for raising a daughter who thinks love and money are the same thing. That stopped me in my tracks. I failed her, Carol continued. Mike Sr. and we struggled financially when she was growing up, and I think we overcompensated by giving her everything we could afford and some things we couldn't. We taught her that being loved meant getting things, and that wanting nice things was more important than earning them. Carol, and we taught her that family means having people who will bail you out of your problems instead of helping you learn to solve them yourself. She was crying now, quiet tears that she wasn't bothering to wipe away. I'm so sorry, David. For all of it. I hugged my sister then, because she looked like she needed it and because I needed it too. We'll figure it out, I said. But Emma needs to learn that love isn't a transaction. And until she does, enabling her isn't helping her. I know, Carol said. I know you're right. It's just hard to watch your kids struggle when you know you could make it easier. The struggling is how she's going to learn. The easy way hasn't been working out so well for any of us. So that's where we are now. Emma hasn't spoken to me since that dinner 3 weeks ago. Carol says she's gotten a second job and is starting to figure out how to budget her expenses. She's also apparently been seeing a therapist, which Carol thinks is helping. Mike texted me last week to say he'd heard through mutual friends that Emma was doing better, and he was glad. He also said he'd started dating someone new, which I was happy to hear. As for me, I'm still processing all of this. The wedding disaster was bad enough, but learning about the Ryan situation and then having that final confrontation with Emma showed me just how deep the problems in my family really go. But here's the thing I keep coming back to, I don't regret helping with the reception. Even knowing everything I know now, I don't regret showing up for my family when they needed me. Because that's what love looks like, showing up even when the people you love have disappointed you, even when they don't deserve your help, even when helping them doesn't fix the underlying problems. The difference is that love also means setting boundaries. It means saying no when saying yes would hurt more than it helps. It means refusing to enable destructive behavior, even when that behavior is coming from someone you care about. Emma is going to have to figure out how to be an adult who takes care of herself. I can't do that for her, and trying to do it for her would actually prevent her from learning how to do it herself. But when she's ready to have a real relationship again, one based on mutual respect and genuine affection instead of financial expectations, I'll be here. Because that's what family does too. After all, that's what love actually looks like. Story 4.
I spent 6 months planning my daughter's high school graduation party, sending custom invitations, ordering a hand-painted cake, and hiring the photographer she'd always dreamed of. When I arrived at the rented venue to set up, my sister-in-law was already there decorating for her son's middle school graduation, with a cake table reading "Congratulations, Kevin." And my daughter's decorations nowhere to be found. When I asked what was happening, she smirked and said, "Your daughter isn't important, she can share the party or have none." I didn't yell or argue, I just quietly took the cake she'd ordered and smashed it directly into her face. Then I walked out without a word and canceled every deposit while booking the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurant instead. By midnight, the entire family group chat had exploded. It started 6 months ago when my daughter Emma told me she wanted the perfect graduation party. Not just any party, the party. The kind that gets talked about for years, posted on social media until everyone's sick of seeing it, the whole 9 yards. And listen, Emma had earned it. Straight A's, valedictorian, full scholarship to Northwestern. If any kid deserved perfection, it was mine. So I threw myself into planning like it was my second career. Custom invitations with hand-lettered calligraphy that cost more than my first car. A 3-tier cake painted with edible gold leaf depicting Emma's journey from kindergarten to graduation. Professional photography with the woman who'd shot her senior portraits. Emma had fallen in love with her work, said she felt like a supermodel during that session. I'd even rented the Riverside Community Center, the good one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, not that dingy multi-purpose room with the fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look dead. Every detail mattered. The napkins matched the school colors but in a sophisticated way, navy and gold, not that cheap plastic garbage. I'd sourced flowers from 3 different vendors to get the exact shade of cream roses Emma had pinned to her dream board. The playlist took me 2 weeks to curate, balancing her favorites with songs that wouldn't make grandparents flee to the parking lot. 6 months of my life. Every evening after work, every weekend morning, every lunch break spent calling vendors and checking details. My husband David kept joking that I'd miss my calling as a wedding planner. Emma would roll her eyes, but I'd catch her taking pictures of the planning binders I'd assembled, secretly thrilled that someone cared enough to make her day absolutely perfect. The morning of the party, I arrived at Riverside at 8 a.m. sharp. I had my timelines printed and laminated, my emergency kit packed with everything from safety pins to stain remover, and a sense of accomplishment that felt better than at any promotion I'd ever received. This was it. The culmination of months of careful planning and love. I pushed open the glass doors, juggling my planning totes and the emergency cooler of backup flowers, already mentally arranging the morning's setup schedule. The caterers would arrive at 10, the photographer at 11, the DJ at noon. Emma wasn't due until 2, which gave us plenty of time to transform the space into something magical. Except someone had beaten me to it. The main hall, my reserved main hall, was already decorated. Cheap blue and silver streamers hung from the ceiling in drooping lines. Dollar store balloons clustered around folding tables draped in plastic tablecloths that screamed last-minute panic shopping. And there, right where Emma's beautiful cake was supposed to sit in pride of place, was a sheet cake from the grocery store with "Congratulations, Kevin" piped across it in electric blue frosting. Kevin. My sister-in-law Patricia's son. The kid who was graduating 8th grade, not high school, 8th grade, and apparently needed to celebrate it in my daughter's reserved venue. I stood there for a solid 30 seconds, certain I'd walked into the wrong room. Maybe I'd gotten confused, maybe there was another event space I'd forgotten about. But no, this was definitely the Riverside main hall, with those distinctive windows and the polished hardwood floors I'd specifically requested. The same room I'd put a deposit down on in January. The same room I'd confirmed 3 times in the past week. Oh good, you're finally here. I turned to find Patricia emerging from the kitchen area, carrying a tray of what looked like gas station cupcakes. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt that said "World's Best Aunt," which, let me tell you, was the kind of irony that would normally make me laugh if I weren't having some kind of out-of-body experience. "Patricia," I said, and honestly I'm proud of how calm my voice sounded. "What's going on here?" She set down the cupcakes and actually had the nerve to look annoyed with me. "Kevin's graduation party, obviously. Did you forget?" "Forget what?" "This is Emma's party. I reserved this space 6 months ago." "Oh, that." She waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. "I talked to Mom about it, and we decided Kevin should have his party here too. It's silly to have 2 separate events when they're both graduating, don't you think? Much more economical this way." The world went very quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of a library or early morning, the dangerous quiet that happens right before something breaks. I could hear my pulse in my ears, could feel my hands starting to shake just slightly. "Patricia," I said, still in that eerily calm voice, "Kevin is graduating from middle school. Emma is graduating as valedictorian of her high school class with a full scholarship to Northwestern. These are not the same thing." "Graduation is graduation," she shrugged. "Besides, your daughter isn't that important. She can share the party or have none." I need you to understand something about that moment. I've been married to David for 19 years. I've raised Emma from a colicky baby who never slept to a brilliant young woman who makes me proud every single day. I've dealt with difficult coworkers, nightmare neighbors, and my share of entitled people. But I had never, and I mean never, had someone look me in the eye and tell me my daughter wasn't important. Something crystallized in that moment. A cold, clear understanding that this wasn't about party planning, venue mix-ups, or even Patricia's legendary selfishness. This was about respect. About love. About the value we place on the people who matter most to us. "Where are Emma's decorations?" I asked. "Oh, those." Patricia gestured vaguely toward a corner where I could now see my carefully chosen decorations stacked in a pile like discarded trash. "They didn't really go with Kevin's theme, so I put them aside. You can use whatever fits." I walked over to that pile. 6 months of planning, thousands of dollars, countless hours of love and attention reduced to a rejected heap in the corner. The custom banner I'd had made, "Congratulations Emma, Class of 2025 valedictorian," was crumpled beneath a box of emergency supplies. The elegant centerpieces I'd assembled by hand were shoved to one side, some of the flowers already wilting from being out of water. "Patricia," I said, walking back toward the cake table. "I need to ask you something." "What?" "Did you really think this was going to work?" She looked confused. "What do you mean?" I picked up Kevin's sheet cake. It was heavier than expected, dense with that artificially sweet grocery store frosting. "Did you really think I was going to walk in here, see that you'd hijacked my daughter's graduation party, and just go along with it?" "I thought you'd be reasonable," she said, but something in her voice had changed. A little less confident, a little more aware that maybe this wasn't going as smoothly as she'd planned. "Reasonable," I repeated. "Right." And then I lifted that cake up and smashed it directly into her face. The sound it made was perfect. A soft, splatting thud followed by Patricia's shocked gasp as electric blue frosting slid down her cheeks and onto her World's Best Aunt shirt. A chunk of cake fell to the floor with a wet plop, and the sugary smell of grocery store vanilla filled the air. She stood there, frozen, blue frosting dripping from her hair, her mouth hanging open in absolute shock. I'd like to tell you I felt guilty, but honestly, it was the most satisfying moment I'd had in months. "Clean that up," I said, setting the demolished cake plate back on the table. "And get out." I turned and walked toward the exit, my hands steady now, my mind crystal clear. Behind me, I could hear Patricia starting to sputter, probably getting ready to launch into one of her legendary tantrums, but I didn't stop to listen. I had calls to make. The first call was to David, who answered on the second ring. "Hey Han, how's the setup going?" "Change of plans," I said, walking to my car. "Cancel everything. Caterers, DJ, photographer, all of it." "What? Why? What happened?" "I'll explain later. Right now I need you to call Emma and tell her to wear that stunning black dress, the one from Homecoming. We're having a different kind of party." The second call was to Giuseppe's, the most exclusive rooftop restaurant in the city. The place where we'd celebrated our anniversary last year, where reservation waiting lists stretch months in advance and dinner for two could easily cost more than most people's rent. "Giuseppe's, this is Marcus speaking." "Marcus, this is Sarah Williams. I know this is incredibly last minute, but I need to book your private dining room for tonight. For about 20 people. Mrs. Williams, I'm so sorry, but we're completely booked for. I'll pay triple your normal rate." There was a pause. Let me check with the manager. 3 minutes later, I had a reservation for the rooftop's most exclusive space. The one with the panoramic city view, the one where celebrities celebrated their birthdays and business moguls closed million-dollar deals. The third call was to Linda, Emma's photographer. She was supposed to be at Riverside in 2 hours, but plans had changed. "Linda? It's Sarah Williams. I need you to meet us at Giuseppe's rooftop instead. And bring your most glamorous backdrop, we're doing something special." The fourth call was the tricky one. My mother-in-law, David's mom, who'd probably already heard from Patricia and would be expecting explanations I wasn't ready to give. "Margaret, it's Sarah. Emma's party has moved to Giuseppe's rooftop. We'll see you there at 7. "Sarah," Patricia called me very upset, saying Giuseppe's rooftop, 7 o'clock. Emma's wearing black, so dress accordingly. I hung up before she could respond. There would be time for conversations later, but right now I had a party to salvage. The next few hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. David picked up Emma from her friend's house where she'd been getting ready, spinning some story about a surprise upgrade that left her confused but excited. I drove across town to the specialty bakery that had made Emma's original cake, hoping against hope that they might have something, anything, that could work on zero notice. Mrs. Williams, the owner, a tiny French woman named Celeste, looked surprised to see me. "Your cake isn't ready for pickup until 4. "About that," I said. "I need it now. And I need it delivered to Giuseppe's rooftop restaurant instead of Riverside Community Center." Celeste frowned. "But it's not finished. We still need to apply the final gold leaf details and... How long would that take?" "Perhaps 2 hours, but, do it. I'll pay whatever rush charges you need." "Mrs. Williams, may I ask what happened?" I looked at this woman who'd spent 3 days crafting the perfect cake for my daughter, who'd listened to my detailed explanations about colors and themes and the importance of getting every detail right. "Someone tried to ruin my daughter's party," I said. "And I'm not letting that happen." Celeste nodded slowly, then called something in rapid French to her assistant. "We will have it ready in 90 minutes, and we will deliver it personally to ensure it arrives perfect." By 6:30, everything was in place. The rooftop dining room at Giuseppe's was transformed into something even more elegant than my original vision. Candlelight flickered against floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The cake sat on a marble display table, its gold leaf details catching the light like real precious metal. Linda had set up her equipment in the corner, ready to capture every moment. Emma walked in wearing that black dress, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon, and I watched her face transform as she took in the scene. "Mom," she whispered. "This is incredible. But I thought we were having the party at Riverside?" "Plans changed," I said, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her dress. "Sometimes life has better ideas than we do." The guests started arriving, Emma's friends, our family, neighbors who'd watched her grow up. Everyone dressed up, everyone excited, everyone treating this like the milestone celebration it deserved to be. David worked the room like a natural host, making sure everyone had drinks and appetizers, keeping the conversation flowing. Emma was radiant. Absolutely glowing as she moved between groups, accepting congratulations and posing for pictures against the backdrop of city lights. This was how her graduation night was supposed to feel: special, celebrated, worthy of the achievement she'd worked so hard to earn. Around 8:30, my phone started buzzing. Text messages in the family group chat that I'd been pointedly ignoring all afternoon. "Patricia, Sarah ruined Kevin's graduation party and assaulted me with a cake." "Margaret, I think there's been some misunderstanding." Patricia says Sarah canceled at Emma's party? Patricia, she smashed Kevin's cake in my face and then stole our venue. David's brother Tom, what's going on? Patricia is posting on Facebook about some kind of family drama. Patricia, Sarah is jealous that Kevin is graduating too. Margaret, Patricia, please calm down. I'm sure we can work this out. Patricia, she attacked me. Over a stupid party. I watched the messages pile up, each one more hysterical than the last, and felt nothing but a calm sense of vindication. Let Patricia spin whatever story she wanted. Let her tell everyone I was crazy, jealous, violent. The truth was sitting right in front of me, my daughter surrounded by people who loved her, celebrating her actual achievements in a setting that matched their significance. David appeared at my elbow. The group chat is going insane, he murmured. I noticed. Patricia's telling everyone you attacked her. I smashed a cake in her face, I said calmly. After she hijacked our daughter's graduation party and told me Emma wasn't important enough to deserve her own celebration. David was quiet for a moment, watching Emma laugh with her friends. Good, he said finally. She had it coming. Around 9, Margaret arrived looking flustered and overdressed in what was clearly her fix the family crisis outfit. She made a beeline for me, her face set in that diplomatically neutral expression she wore when trying to smooth over one of Patricia's disasters. Sarah, dear, I think there's been some confusion. No confusion, I said pleasantly. Patricia decided Kevin's middle school graduation was more important than Emma's high school graduation, so she took over the venue we'd reserved and told me Emma could share or have nothing. I disagreed. Margaret's diplomatically neutral expression cracked slightly. She said you were violent. I put cake on her face. After she literally threw Emma's decorations in a corner like garbage. Margaret looked around the elegant rooftop space, taking in the beautiful cake, the professional photography setup, the way Emma glowed as she posed with her friends against the city skyline. Oh, she said quietly. Yeah. Oh. Patricia said this was about jealousy. About Kevin graduating too. Kevin graduated from 8th grade, Margaret. Emma graduated as valedictorian with a full scholarship to Northwestern. If Patricia can't tell the difference between those achievements, that's her problem, not mine. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. The cake thing was unnecessary, she said finally. Was it? Because I'm pretty sure it was exactly as necessary as it needed to be. Around 10, Emma came over to where I was standing by the windows, her cheeks flushed with happiness and excitement. Mom, this is perfect. Better than perfect. I can't believe you put all this together. You deserved perfect, I said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You worked hard for 4 years, you earned every honor, every recognition. You deserved a celebration that matched that achievement. What really happened with the original venue? I looked at my daughter, brilliant, kind, hard-working Emma who'd never asked for anything unreasonable, who'd spent 4 years pushing herself to excel, who deserved every good thing this world had to offer. Someone decided your accomplishments weren't worth celebrating properly, I said. And I disagreed with that assessment. Emma hugged me then, fierce and tight, and whispered, "Thank you for fighting for me." That's when I knew, with absolute certainty, that smashing Patricia's cake had been the right choice. Not because it felt good in the moment, though honestly, it really did, but because it sent a clear message about what I valued. About who I would fight for. About the line you absolutely could not cross when it came to my daughter. The party wound down around 11:30. Emma's friends started heading home, promising to post all their pictures and tag everyone. The relatives filtered out, most of them still looking slightly stunned by the unexpected venue change. Linda packed up her equipment, already talking about when she could have proofs ready. David settled the bill while I gathered Emma's cards and gifts, and honestly, watching him hand over a credit card for what was probably our most expensive single evening ever felt amazing. This was what Emma's graduation was worth. This was the celebration she deserved. In the car on the way home, Emma was scrolling through the pictures Linda had already uploaded to her phone. "Mom, look at this one," she said, showing me a shot of her cutting the cake, the gold leaf catching the light, the city sprawling behind her. I look like someone important. You are someone important, I said. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. My phone buzzed with another group chat message. Then another. And another. Patricia, I can't believe you're all acting like Sarah did nothing wrong. Tom, Patricia, maybe if you hadn't taken over their reserved venue. Patricia, it was supposed to be shared. Margaret, I just got home from Emma's party. It was lovely. Patricia, you went to her party? After what she did to me? Margaret, Emma is valedictorian, Patricia. That deserves recognition. Patricia, so Kevin doesn't matter? David, Kevin matters. That's why he should have his own party, at his own venue, on his own day. Patricia, I hate this family. I turned off my phone and slipped it into my purse. Tomorrow there would be more messages, probably phone calls, definitely drama. Patricia would tell her version of the story to anyone who would listen, painting herself as the victim and me as some kind of unhinged monster. But tonight, Emma was home safe and happy, her phone full of pictures from a celebration that honored her achievements and showed her how much she was loved. Tonight, she knew without question that her mother would fight for her, would stand up to anyone who tried to diminish her worth. And honestly, if that made me the villain in Patricia's story, I was completely fine with that. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 unread messages. The family group chat had apparently exploded overnight, with Patricia recruiting allies and demanding apologies and threatening to never speak to any of us again. I made coffee, fed the dog, and started deleting messages without reading them. Emma came downstairs around 10, still glowing from the night before. The pictures are incredible, she said, showing me her phone. Everyone's sharing them. Ashley's mom asked who our photographer was because she wants to hire Linda for Ashley's graduation next month. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Mom? Emma sat down across from me at the kitchen table. Can I ask you something? Always. When you were planning the party, did you ever think it might not work out? I considered the question seriously. I thought about weather, about vendor cancellations, about little things going wrong. I never imagined someone would try to take it over completely. But you fixed it. Even when everything went sideways, you made it perfect. I made it what it needed to be, I corrected. Perfect was always about celebrating you, not about any specific venue or decoration. Emma smiled. I'm going to remember last night forever. Not just the party, but the way you fought for it. For me. And that, right there, made everything worth it. The cake smashing, the frantic rescheduling, the family drama, the angry text messages, all of it was worth seeing Emma understand that she was valued, that her achievements mattered, that someone would go to battle for her when necessary. My phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call and turned to Emma. So, what should we do with all those leftover flowers from the original planning? Can we take them to the children's hospital? The nurses there were so nice when I volunteered last summer. Perfect idea, I said, and meant it. Because that's what you do when someone tries to diminish what matters most to you, you don't just fight back. You take the pieces they tried to destroy and you build something even better. Patricia could keep her grocery store sheet cake and her drama. Emma and I had something infinitely more valuable, the unshakable knowledge that we would always have each other's backs, no matter what. And if that meant occasionally smashing cake into deserving faces? Well, some lessons are worth learning the messy way. 3 weeks later, the family drama had mostly died down. Patricia was still nursing her grudge and posting passive-aggressive Facebook memes about fake family members, but the rest of the relatives had moved on. Margaret had even asked me for Giuseppe's contact information. Apparently she wanted to book their private room for her anniversary. Emma left for Northwestern orientation, armed with photo albums from her perfect graduation party and the confidence that comes from knowing you're truly celebrated. She texted me pictures from campus, already making friends, already thriving. And me? I kept the smashed cake plate. Cleaned it up, of course, but kept it as a reminder that sometimes the most important battles are fought over things that might seem small to other people but mean everything to the ones you love. Sometimes you have to be willing to make a mess to protect what matters most. Sometimes the right response to someone telling you your child doesn't matter is to show them exactly how wrong they are, dramatically, publicly, and with perfect aim. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Some hills are absolutely worth dying on, and my daughter's worth is definitely one of them. The cake plate sits on my desk now, a reminder that love isn't always polite, protection doesn't always come with perfect manners, and sometimes the most profound acts of devotion happen in moments of controlled chaos. But let me tell you what happened next, because the story doesn't end there. If anything, the real drama was just beginning. About a month after Emma left for college, I was grocery shopping when I ran into Patricia's neighbor, Linda Chen. We'd always been friendly, our kids went to elementary school together, and she'd helped me out during that disastrous PTA fundraiser 3 years ago. Sarah. She called out, pushing her cart over to mine in the produce section. I've been meaning to talk to you. My stomach clenched. Here it comes, I thought. Patricia's version of the story, spread through the neighborhood gossip network. I braced myself for an awkward conversation about how I'd overreacted or been unreasonable. Instead, Linda looked around conspiratorially and lowered her voice. I heard what Patricia did at Emma's graduation party. Oh. I picked up a bag of apples, trying to look casual. I'm sure you heard her version. Actually, I heard the truth from Margaret. She came to book club last week and told us the whole story. Linda shook her head. Patricia tried to steal your daughter's graduation party? For Kevin's middle school graduation? I nearly dropped the apples. Margaret told you? She was furious. Said Patricia had manipulated the whole situation, lied about having permission to use the venue, and then had the nerve to act like the victim when you stood up for Emma. Linda leaned closer. Honestly, Sarah, half the neighborhood has been wanting to do something like that to Patricia for years. She's been pulling entitled nonsense since Kevin was in kindergarten. I had no idea Margaret felt that way. Oh, she's been done with Patricia's drama for a while. Apparently, this was just the last straw. Linda grinned. The cake thing was inspired, by the way. Classic. Walking out of that grocery store, I felt something shift inside me. For weeks, I'd been second-guessing myself, wondering if I'd really overreacted, if maybe there was some way I could have handled things more diplomatically. But hearing Linda's perspective, and knowing that Margaret had actually defended my actions, made me realize something important. I hadn't been the villain in this story. I'd been the mother who refused to let her child be treated as less than. That evening, David and I were making dinner when my phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen, and I answered immediately. Mom, you need to see Kevin's Instagram story, she said without preamble. What? Why? Just look. I'll wait. I put her on speaker and opened Instagram, navigating to Kevin's profile. His most recent story was a video of him at what looked like a restaurant, sitting in front of a small birthday cake with a single candle. So my graduation party got ruined because my crazy aunt decided to attack my mom, Kevin was saying to the camera. But it's fine, because next year when I graduate high school, we're going to have the biggest, most expensive party ever. Way better than Emma's stupid party. The video cut to him blowing out the candle, then continued, my mom says Emma's not even that smart anyway. Like, cool, you got into one college. Kevin Patterson is going to get into Harvard. David and I exchanged glances. Emma's voice came through the phone, tight with hurt. Mom, is this really what they think? That my achievements don't matter? Something cold and fierce settled in my chest. Emma, honey, what Kevin thinks doesn't change the fact that you earned a full scholarship to Northwestern through 4 years of incredible hard work. His opinion, and his mother's, doesn't diminish your accomplishments even slightly. I know that logically, but it still hurts when people try to minimize something you worked so hard for, I finished. I get it. After we hung up, David looked at me across the kitchen. Patricia's really not letting this go, is she? Apparently not. What are you going to do? I thought about it while I finished chopping vegetables for our stir-fry. What was I going to do? Patricia was clearly still spreading her narrative, still trying to paint Emma's achievements as unimpressive while building up Kevin's middle school graduation like it was equivalent to a Nobel Prize. The old me, the me from before the cake incident, might have tried to take the high road. Might have ignored it, hoping it would blow over. But that me had learned something important about the cost of staying silent when people attack what you love most. I'm going to make sure Kevin gets exactly what he's asking for, I said finally. David raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? He wants a party that's way better than Emma's? Fine. I'm going to help Patricia throw him the most memorable graduation party in the family's history. Sarah. David's voice carried a warning note. Trust me, I said, smiling in a way that probably should have worried him. This is going to be educational for everyone involved. The next day, I did something that probably sounds insane. I called Patricia. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice immediately defensive. What do you want, Sarah? I want to apologize, I said, putting just the right amount of remorse in my voice. I've been thinking about what happened, and you were right. Families should come together for celebrations, not fight over them. Silence on the other end. Then, are you serious right now? Completely serious. I overreacted, and I'm sorry. Emma's at college now, she's moved on, and I think it's time I did too. Well. Patricia sounded suspicious but pleased. I appreciate you saying that. In fact, I'd like to make it up to you. I heard Kevin talking about wanting an amazing graduation party next year, and I'd love to help plan it. Consider it my peace offering. Another long pause. You want to help plan Kevin's party? I want to show that there are no hard feelings. And honestly, Patricia, you've seen what I can do when I put my mind to party planning. Imagine what I could create for Kevin when I'm not stressed about timing conflicts. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. Patricia loved being the center of attention, loved having people fuss over her and her family. The idea of having me, someone who'd just thrown an incredibly expensive, elegant party, planning Kevin's celebration was too tempting to resist. I suppose that could work, she said slowly. Wonderful. Let's start planning now. Kevin deserves the absolute best, don't you think? Over the next few months, I threw myself into planning Kevin's graduation party with the same intensity I brought to Emma's. I met with Patricia weekly, took detailed notes on every preference and requirement, and began assembling what would definitely be the most memorable celebration Kevin Patterson would ever experience. The venue was Patricia's first request, somewhere that would outshine Giuseppe's rooftop. After some research, I suggested the ballroom of the Grandview Hotel, the city's most exclusive venue, the kind of place where corporate galas and charity auctions were held. The rental fee alone was more than most people's cars. That seems expensive, Patricia said when I showed her the pricing. Oh, don't worry about that, I said cheerfully. You're not paying for it. What do you mean? Well, I feel so terrible about what happened with Emma's party. The least I can do is cover Kevin's celebration. Consider it my gift to the family. Patricia's eyes lit up. Sarah, that's incredibly generous, but, no buts. Kevin deserves the best, and I'm going to make sure he gets it. What Patricia didn't know, what she was too blinded by the promise of an expensive party to ask about, was that I had some very specific ideas about what the best meant for Kevin. The guest list was my masterpiece. Patricia wanted to invite everyone she'd ever met, but I convinced her that Kevin's party should be more exclusive, more sophisticated. We settled on about 50 people, close family, Kevin's friends from school, and a few special guests that I insisted on adding. Who's Dr. Morrison? Patricia asked, looking at my addition to the list. Kevin's 7th grade science teacher, I said. Remember how proud you were when Kevin got a B+ in his class? I thought he'd love to see how Kevin's doing now. Oh, that's sweet. What about these other names? Various teachers, the middle school principal, a few parents of Kevin's classmates. People who've watched him grow up and would love to celebrate his achievements. What I didn't mention was that I'd been doing some research. Dr. Morrison, for example, had quite a lot to say about Kevin's performance in his class when I called to invite him. Apparently, that B+ had been the result of significant extra credit work after Kevin had initially been failing due to not turning in assignments. The middle school principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, was delighted to be invited. She remembered Kevin well, particularly the incident in 8th grade when he'd been caught cheating on a history test and had blamed his study partner. Kevin's former classmates' parents were equally enthusiastic about attending, especially the Hendersons, whose daughter Amy had been Kevin's lab partner in several classes. They had some interesting stories about Kevin's approach to group projects. The menu was Patricia's second obsession. She wanted something that would rival the elegant cuisine from Emma's party at Giuseppe's, so I suggested a formal sit-down dinner with multiple courses. Patricia was thrilled with the sophistication of it all. This is going to be incredible, she said during one of our planning meetings. Kevin's going to feel so special. Oh, he definitely will, I agreed. This party is going to be all about Kevin and exactly who he is. 2 weeks before the party, I made my final arrangements. The keynote speaker was confirmed. I'd hired a motivational speaker who specialized in talking to young people about integrity, hard work, and personal accountability. The slide presentation was ready, featuring photos of Kevin throughout middle school and high school, along with some special additions that really captured his journey. The party favors were ordered, elegant bookmarks with inspirational quotes about honesty and perseverance. The centerpieces were arranged, beautiful floral displays with subtle academic themes, each table representing a different subject Kevin had studied. Patricia was beside herself with excitement. Sarah, this is going to be the event of the year. Everyone's going to be talking about it. Oh, I guarantee they will, I said. The night before the party, Emma called from college. Mom, are you really going through with this? I'm throwing Kevin the graduation party he deserves, I said. Nothing more, nothing less. And Patricia has no idea? Patricia knows exactly what she asked for, a party that celebrates Kevin's achievements and shows everyone who he really is. Emma was quiet for a moment. I almost feel bad for him. Don't. This party is going to be very educational for Kevin. And for Patricia. Sometimes the best lessons come from getting exactly what you ask for. The day of Kevin's graduation party arrived with perfect spring weather. The Grandview Hotel ballroom looked stunning, with crystal chandeliers casting elegant light over tables draped in crisp white linens. The flowers were gorgeous, the menu was sophisticated, and every detail was absolutely perfect. Patricia arrived early, dressed in a new outfit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Kevin was beside her in a suit that looked like it had been tailored specifically for the occasion. "Sarah," Patricia gushed, "this is incredible. You've outdone yourself." "Just wait," I said. "The real celebration hasn't even started yet." Guests began arriving around 6:30. Kevin's classmates and their parents, teachers from his various schools, family members who'd driven in from out of town. The ballroom filled with a kind of elegant chatter that made Patricia beam with pride. David appeared at my elbow, looking handsome in his best suit. "Everyone's here," he murmured. "Perfect timing," I said, watching Patricia pose for photos with Kevin next to the elaborate cake display. At 7:30, I clinked my champagne glass to get everyone's attention. "Welcome, everyone, to Kevin's graduation celebration," I began. Patricia asked me to help plan this party because she wanted Kevin to have an event that truly reflected his achievements and character. "Tonight, we're going to do exactly that." Applause rippled through the room. Patricia practically glowed with pride. "Before we begin dinner, I'd like to invite Dr. Morrison, Kevin's 7th grade science teacher, to share a few words about Kevin's journey through middle school." Dr. Morrison stood up, clearing his throat. He was a tall, thin man with graying hair and the kind of serious expression that made students pay attention. "Thank you, Sarah. I'm delighted to be here tonight to celebrate Kevin's graduation." He paused, looking around the elegant ballroom. "You know, when Sarah called to invite me, she asked me to speak about Kevin's growth and character during his time in my class." Patricia beamed from her seat at the head table. "Kevin was certainly memorable," Dr. Morrison continued. "I remember when he first joined my 7th grade science class, he struggled quite a bit with the concept of independent work. In fact, his first quarter grade was a D-, primarily because he had difficulty completing assignments on his own." Patricia's smile faltered slightly. "But Kevin showed real determination in the second half of the year. With significant support from his parents and some creative extra credit opportunities, he was able to bring his grade up to a B+. It was a real lesson in the importance of personal accountability and hard work." Dr. Morrison sat down to polite applause. Patricia looked confused, clearly wondering why her son's former teacher had chosen to focus on Kevin's struggles rather than his successes. "Thank you, Dr. Morrison," I said smoothly. "Next, I'd like to invite Mrs. Rodriguez, Kevin's middle school principal, to share her memories." Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, a petite woman with kind eyes and a warm smile that somehow managed to look both friendly and slightly predatory. "Kevin Patterson," she said, shaking her head with what might have been fondness. "Where do I begin? Kevin certainly kept things interesting during his years at Jefferson Middle School." She launched into what sounded like a fond reminiscence that was actually a carefully constructed catalog of Kevin's disciplinary issues, academic shortcuts, and general lack of personal responsibility. She told the story of the history test cheating incident with a kind of gentle disappointment that made it clear exactly how seriously the school had taken Kevin's breach of academic integrity. "But Kevin learned from his mistakes," she concluded. "And I think tonight's celebration shows how much his family values education and honest achievement." By now, Patricia was looking distinctly uncomfortable. Several guests were exchanging glances, and Kevin himself had gone pale. "Thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez," I said. "Now, I know many of you have your own special memories of Kevin from over the years. Mr. Henderson, would you like to share how Kevin contributed to your daughter Amy's group projects?" What followed was 20 minutes of the most diplomatically devastating character assassination I'd ever witnessed. One by one, parents and teachers stood up to share fond memories of Kevin that painted a crystal-clear picture of a young man who'd spent his academic career taking shortcuts, avoiding responsibility, and letting other people do his work while he took credit. The Henderson's story about Kevin's contribution to Amy's science fair project, he'd shown up on presentation day without having done any of the work, then tried to claim equal credit, was particularly illuminating. Mrs. Peterson's tale about Kevin's role in the 8th grade class play, he'd missed most rehearsals, forgotten his lines, and blamed the other actors when the performance went poorly, drew some uncomfortable chuckles. Through it all, I stood at the microphone, nodding encouragingly and thanking each speaker for sharing their wonderful memories of Kevin's unique approach to academic challenges. Kevin had slumped down in his chair, his face red with embarrassment. Patricia kept trying to catch my eye, probably hoping I'd move things along to dinner, but I was committed to making sure every guest had a chance to share their special Kevin memories. The final speaker was Kevin's current high school guidance counselor, whom I'd invited specifically to discuss Kevin's bright future and college prospects. Kevin's high school career has been interesting, Mr. Torres began carefully. His current GPA is 2.3, which puts him in the bottom third of his graduating class. While Kevin has expressed interest in attending Harvard, his academic record and standardized test scores suggest that community college might be a more realistic starting point. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Of course, Mr. Torres continued, there's nothing wrong with community college. Many successful people start there and transfer to four-year universities after proving they're ready for more rigorous academic work. Patricia looked like she was going to be sick. Thank you all for sharing your memories, I said, retaking the microphone. Kevin, I hope you've enjoyed hearing about all the ways you've touched people's lives during your academic journey. Kevin mumbled something that might have been thanks and stared at his plate. Now, before we begin our dinner service, I have a special presentation prepared. A photo journey through Kevin's school years, highlighting some of his most memorable moments. The lights dimmed and a projection screen descended from the ceiling. What followed was indeed a comprehensive photo journey through Kevin's academic career, but not the kind Patricia had been expecting. There was Kevin at the 6th grade science fair, standing next to a project with Amy Henderson's name clearly visible as the primary researcher, his own contribution noted as helped with poster design. Kevin receiving the Most Improved Student Award in 7th grade, an award that, as I narrated, was given to students who had started the year with significant behavioral issues but had shown improvement. There were photos of Kevin at various school events, always in the background, always doing the minimum required, always finding ways to avoid real responsibility or effort. The final photo was Kevin's senior portrait, professional and polished, with text overlay that read, Kevin Patterson, ready for the next chapter at community college. When the lights came up, you could have heard a pin drop. Patricia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I think there's been some kind of mistake, she said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. No mistake, I said pleasantly. You asked me to throw Kevin a graduation party that would show everyone who he really is and what he's accomplished. This party celebrates exactly that. You said this would be better than Emma's party. Oh, it is better. Emma's party celebrated her achievements, valedictorian, full scholarship, honor society, volunteer work. Kevin's party celebrates his achievements too. It's perfectly appropriate for what he's actually done. Patricia's face was turning red. This is sabotage. This is honesty, I corrected. Kevin wanted a party that was all about him and his accomplishments. Well, here it is. Every speech tonight focused on Kevin's actual academic journey. Every photo showed Kevin's real contributions to school projects and activities. This party is absolutely authentic. Kevin finally looked up from his plate. Can we just eat now? Of course, I said brightly. Dinner is served. The meal that followed was probably the most uncomfortable social gathering I'd ever attended. Guests picked at their elegant food while making awkward small talk. Kevin's friends from school looked mortified on his behalf. The teachers and parents tried to salvage the evening by steering conversations toward safer topics. Patricia barely touched her food, shooting daggers at me across the ballroom. But she couldn't leave, too many people were watching, and walking out would only confirm that everything the speakers had said was true. Around 9:30, guests started making polite excuses to leave. The teachers thanked me for inviting them and complimented the elegant venue, though their smiles were slightly strained. Kevin's classmates and their parents made quick exits, probably eager to discuss what they'd witnessed. By 10 o'clock, only family members remained. Margaret approached me as I supervised the cleaning crew's packing of the decorations. Sarah, that was educational? I suggested. Brutal, she said. But not undeserved. Kevin spent months making social media posts about how his party was going to be so much better than Emma's, how Emma wasn't really that smart, how her achievements didn't matter. Well, his party was exactly what he asked for, a celebration that put his achievements on full display next to hers. Margaret nodded slowly. Patricia's furious. Patricia should be grateful. Her son just received a very expensive lesson about the difference between earned achievements and empty boasting. Most people have to pay a lot more than the cost of a party to learn that kind of lesson. What happens now? I looked around the elegant ballroom, at the beautiful floral arrangements and crystal chandeliers, at the evidence of thousands of dollars spent on a party that had perfectly accomplished its goal. Now Kevin goes to community college and hopefully learns that success requires actual work, not just good PR, I said. And Patricia learns that when you ask someone to throw a party celebrating your child's achievements, you better make sure your child actually has achievements worth celebrating. Margaret was quiet for a moment. You know this means war, don't you? Patricia will never forgive this. Good, I said, watching Patricia storm out of the ballroom with Kevin trailing behind her. I don't want forgiveness from someone who tried to steal my daughter's graduation party and then spent months talking about how Emma's accomplishments didn't matter. The drive home was quiet. David kept glancing at me, probably trying to figure out what I was thinking. So, he said finally. How do you feel? Satisfied, I said. Kevin got exactly the graduation party he deserved. One that honestly reflected his academic journey and gave him the recognition his efforts had earned. The photos were a nice touch. I thought so. Patricia wanted better than Emma's party, so I made sure everyone could see the difference between Emma's achievements and Kevin's achievements, side by side. Think this will finally end the drama? I considered that as we pulled into our driveway. Probably not. But it will change the nature of it. Patricia can't claim anymore that Kevin is as accomplished as Emma, or that Emma's achievements don't matter. Tonight made it very clear to everyone in the family exactly what each kid has actually accomplished. The next morning, I woke up to a phone ringing at 7 a.m. Emma's name on the caller ID. Mom, oh my gosh, what did you do? She said, laughing so hard she could barely speak. I threw Kevin the graduation party he asked for. Kevin's friend Jake posted video clips on TikTok. The guidance counselor talking about community college? The principal discussing the cheating incident? Mom, it's viral. Like, actually viral? My stomach dropped. Oh no. Oh no? Mom, this is amazing. Everyone can see the difference between someone who actually worked hard and someone who just coasted and complained. You didn't just defend my achievements, you demonstrated why they matter. I never meant for it to become public. But it did, and now everyone knows. Jake's video is tagged with entitled Family Drama and Graduation Party Revenge. The comments are incredible, everyone's talking about how important it is to recognize real achievement versus fake achievement. After I hung up with Emma, I sat in my kitchen with my coffee, processing what had happened. The party I'd planned as a targeted lesson for Patricia and Kevin had somehow become a public demonstration of the importance of actual achievement versus empty boasting. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda Chen, saw the videos. Absolutely brilliant. Patricia needed that reality check. Then another from Margaret, the family group chat is on fire. Patricia's threatening to sue you for emotional damage. Thought you should know. And finally, one from Emma, Mom, I'm proud of you. Love you. I realized something important in that moment. The cake smashing at Emma's graduation had been an emotional reaction, justified, but reactive. Kevin's graduation party had been something else entirely. It had been a calculated demonstration of why achievement matters, why hard work deserves recognition, and why we can't let people diminish genuine accomplishment. Patricia could threaten lawsuits all she wanted. She could post angry social media rants and recruit allies and make my life difficult. But she could never again claim that Kevin's achievements were equivalent to Emma's. She could never again dismiss my daughter's hard work as unimportant. And Kevin? Kevin had learned a valuable lesson about the difference between earning recognition and demanding it. Maybe he'd use that lesson to actually work hard in community college. Maybe he'd figure out that success requires more than just entitlement and good intentions. Or maybe he wouldn't. But that was his choice now. Emma's graduation party had been perfect because it celebrated someone who'd earned celebration. Kevin's graduation party had been perfect because it honestly reflected what he'd actually accomplished. Both parties had done exactly what they were supposed to do. The cake plate still sits on my desk, but now it has company, a photo from Kevin's party, showing him sitting at the head table while his guidance counselor explains his college prospects to a ballroom full of family and friends. Some people might call that cruel. I call it honest. And sometimes, honesty is the kindest gift you can give someone, even when they don't appreciate it at the time. Patricia learned an important lesson that day, even if she'll never admit it, never tell a mother her child doesn't matter. Because mothers like me? We have excellent aim, perfect planning skills, and absolutely no problem making a point the educational way. Emma's achievements stand on their own merit. Kevin's party just made sure everyone could see them clearly.